Chapter 1081. Ollie glanced at Xiaomi with a gloomy expression. He was also very dissatisfied with Xiaomi's tone and attitude. It was as if aside from Arbor, no one else was worth anything in her eyes. It was a little infuriating. Xiaomi shrugged and retracted her gaze. Then, she walked to the side with Gongsun Lai and sat down. She closed her eyes and continued to cultivate. In the past 2 days, the mystic energy in the entire Mystic Beast secret realm had thinned considerably. However, they could instinctively feel that the waves of energy coming from the small house were continuously filling the void of mystic energy here. Such a powerful object it had to be. The 10,000-year-old Xuanji core. On the other side, Arbor was carried by the giant ape's arm the entire way. She watched speechlessly as the ape moved and leaped through the lush green forest and quickly arrived in front of a small house. This small house had red walls and black tiles. There was a red copper bell hanging from the door. The crisp tinkling of the bell could be heard from afar. The giant ape put her down and gently poked Arbor's shoulder with its finger. Xiaomu turned to look at it and said with a nod, "I can go in, but next time, you can't always carry me back and forth." She wasn't a little doll. What was with her being carried around all the time? She was so shameless that the giant ape grinned at her. This big guy had been in the secret realm for so many years that its intelligence had long since developed. Naturally, it could understand her words. Seeing it smile, Xiaomu took it as a sign that it agreed with her. She then nodded, put her 2 little claws behind her back, and walked towards the house with light steps. If she advanced within 10 days, she would receive the first opportunity to visit Senior Xuanji. No matter what, this was still a rare opportunity. Arbor began to look forward to it. What kind of good things would this Senior Xuanji give her? After all, she was the first person to successfully advance in the secret realm. It wouldn't do if Senior Xuanji didn't have anything to give her. Creak, the door to the small house was pushed open by her small hand. Looking inside the house, everything was arranged in an orderly manner, spotless. Although it looked like it had been a long time since someone had lived here, everything was properly tidied up. It was probably the work of the spiritual giant ape. Who knew how many years this fellow had been alone in the mystic realm? It only saw humans once every 10 years. It must have been very lonely. "Oh, my young child, you have come at last." A cheerful voice suddenly drilled into her ear. Xiaomu abruptly turned around and swept her gaze around the room. But she did not see anyone. "Stop looking. I'm right above you." Xiaomu abruptly raised her head, and what entered her sight was a pair of small feet in pink embroidered shoes dangling from the ceiling beam, swaying back and forth. "Arbor, do you feel that this old woman is different from the senior expert you imagined?" "Ahahaha, that's right." Xuanji laughed heartily. "I hate being restrained by the rules of the world the most. Acting according to one's nature is my motto." Arbor suddenly interrupted her. "Let's get to the point. If you don't hurry up and say it, this virtual image of yours will completely disappear." Xuanji was silent for a moment, then suddenly laughed maniacally again. Good. My 200 years of waiting were not in vain. Little fellow, you are indeed an interesting child. Chapter 1082. Arbor was speechless as she looked at this senior expert. She couldn't help but mutter softly, "I don't even know if it's a trap. There are no secret treasures or spirit weapons at all." She was very clear that this senior sitting on the beam in front of her seemed to be talking to her. But in reality, it was just a remnant shadow. Everything she said was preset by herself. "Don't think that because I came from the mountains, I can be easily deceived. Little fellow, you're the first person in more than 200 years who can really advance in 10 days in this mystic realm. My bitter wait was not in vain." Sigh. Arbor raised her eyebrows slightly. "My mystic realm has been open for more than 200 years and has accepted at least 20 batches of people. If I'm not wrong, my encouragement reward Xuanji pill should have been used up in the last round of the mystic realm trial." Arbor's mouth twitched. If Wei Nanshu and the others heard this, they would probably vomit blood on the spot. "Sigh, child. From today onwards, you're the 2nd-generation leader of our Xuanji school." "Wait, what 2nd-generation leader of the Xuanji school? Then wouldn't the 1st generation be the senior Xuanji in front of her?" After 300 years, she was only the second generation. What a poor sect this was. She didn't want to be some leader. She refused to accept this kind of job that forced a duck onto a perch. Don't think that being the leader of our Xuanji school is a laborious task. In fact, there are many benefits. Arbor curled her lips noncommittally. Suddenly, the figure sitting on the beam landed lightly in front of her. In one hand, she held a fist-sized object that was as bright as a ruby. This is a 10,000-year-old Xuanji core. Senior Xuanji sighed quietly. It contains all my cultivation and strength in this life. You only need to absorb it into your dantian, and slowly adjust to it. After a few decades, you'll be able to convert all my cultivation into your own. Arbor looked at the Xuanji core in that person's hand in shock. This was. Senior Xuanji had infused all of his power into it before he died. Similar to the pill inheritance she had received from teacher Long Chuyan, what she was about to receive now was a pure cultivation inheritance. Generally speaking, no one would even attempt to obtain such a cultivation inheritance. This was because it was extremely painful to inject all of one's power into the inheritance jade. The process was also extremely dangerous. There's a 90% chance that you'll die a horrible death before you've even succeeded. The remaining success rate was less than 10%, and it was possible to face all kinds of strange problems. Therefore, even when some of the elders in the family passed away, very few people would be stupid enough to choose to pass their cultivation to the younger generation. Because it was too difficult. Of course, if there really was a senior expert who carved his entire life's worth of cultivation into an inheritance jade stone and imparted it to you, that would be the rhythm of a meteoric rise. Think about it. One's life could be shortened by at least 60 to 100 years of struggle. A country bumpkin could immediately become a powerful expert. This inheritance red jade contains my entire life's worth of cultivation. Now the opportunity is in front of you. Little fellow, if you agree to become the second leader of my Xuanji school, kneel down and kowtow to me. Chapter 1083. Darling Qiao didn't make a sound for a long time, as she stared suspiciously at Senior Xuanji, who had a faint smile on her lips. This was a soul that was more than 200 years old. Not only was it transparent, its face was already blurred. Senior Xuanji was obviously anxious when she didn't react after so long. She urged, "Why aren't you kneeling?" Okay, I'll tell you everything. Child, why are you so quick-witted? That's right. To accept my cultivation inheritance, you have to agree to 3 conditions. As I said just now, becoming the second sect master of my Xuanji school is the first condition. This deceitful senior had probably set up this language trap 100 years ago, so that the juniors who came would immediately be mesmerized by the Xuanji core and kneel down to accept her conditions. Then, she would tell others that that was actually only the first condition, and that there were still 2 conditions waiting for them. Arbor rolled her eyes and silently moved her feet to retreat. Senior Xuanji sighed and said, "The second condition is actually quite simple. When my Xuanji school was first established, there were 103 first-generation disciples. After 60 years of continuous hard work by this senior, the school has expanded to more than 5,000 people. To only accept 5,000 disciples after 60 years, it was probably just a third-rate school. The second task I want you to do is to find the 103 first-generation disciples and recruit them back into our Xuanji school." Arbor was speechless and complained softly, "There are so many people. Where can I find the first-generation disciples? I know you'll definitely say that I'm fantasizing and unrealistic." Indeed, Arbor didn't want to scold her, but impatience was already showing in her eyes. She decided to run. She didn't want to take over the Xuanji school's mess. She had to become the sect master and find the first-generation disciples. How troublesome and annoying. I have the nameplates of the 103 first-generation disciples here. As long as you're within 1,000 feet of them, you'll be able to sense them. Arbor, a distance of 1,000 feet is actually not that far. You can fly there casually. I don't want to talk to you anymore." Arbor turned around and ran. He reached out and pulled on the door, but it didn't budge. How could he let her out so easily? Arbor rolled up his sleeves. intending to give this senior Xuanji a good beating before asking her to let him out. Unexpectedly, when she turned around, she saw the senior looking at her with tears in her eyes. Although her face was blurred, she could tell that she was heartbroken. Please don't despise our Xuanji sect. How am I asking for too much? I've given you my entire life's cultivation, and the 103 disciples of our Xuanji school will be your strongest backing in the future. The third condition is even simpler. I want you to find that old bastard Tianjizi's direct disciple and crush him with your strength. Just give him a slap in the face for me. I can even wake up laughing in the underworld. The more Xiaomu listened to this bizarre condition, the stranger it became. Xiaomu turned around and slammed on the door. Open the door, open the door. Giant ape, I know you're outside. Hurry up and open the door. Otherwise, she would tear down this lousy place. Just agree to my request, little fellow. Other than the Xuanji core, I can also give you all the entrance fees I've collected from the 20 batches of people who entered the mystic realm. Arbor, I'm actually speechless. Chapter 1084. So this person had cheated so many people of their spirit weapons and dharma treasures, so that they could be offered to her as a tribute, that she really had to thank her entire family. If Senior Xuanji had a physical body right now, she would definitely be hugging her leg and crying. Arbor turned her head and shot her a displeased glance, resolutely refusing to accept this 10,000-year-old Xuanji core. No problem, she already had the essence soil. She just needed to fuse it with her essence soil, and she would definitely be able to advance another level in a short period of time. That would be enough. As for Senior Xuanji's cultivation inheritance jade, she could be considered unlucky enough to enjoy it. With so many additional conditions, how could she be a patient person? No way, no way, no way. Our dear Xiaomu shook her small hand vigorously and gave an affirmative answer. I won't accept it. She was about to turn and kick the door open when suddenly, a green vine shot out from her wrist and automatically coiled around the Xuanji core in Senior Xuanji's palm. Arbor couldn't stop it in time. She watched as that cheating tree directly sucked the Xuanji core into the mystic domain with a whoosh. She was shocked, stunned. Wasn't this crazy tree in seclusion? Could it be that the temptation of the Xuanji core was so great that it lured the little tree out of seclusion? Arbor hurriedly used her inner sight to take a look. She saw that after that cheating tree pulled the Xuanji core into the depths of the mystic domain, it covered the mystic domain with its roots. The entire tree emitted a pure and holy green glow, as it pretended to be dead and motionless. It looked like it hadn't come out of seclusion at all. Haha, if the little treant was in front of her right now, she would definitely go up and beat it up without a second word. This darn fellow. How many times had it cheated her all these years? It was practically no trick of count. Arbor nagged, but Senior Xuanji was overjoyed. She danced and shouted, Xuanji School's second-generation sect master. You're the second generation. Your whole family is second generation. Arbor turned around angrily and glared at this Senior Xuanji, whose face was blurred out. Second sect leader, I'll leave the 3 missions to you. Do them well. I know you can do it. Senior Xuanji laughed and said, Oh right. If you meet the descendants of the merfolk race when you travel the pugilistic world in the future, help them if you can. This is already the 4th matter. Xiaomu grumpily shouted at her. Although she knew that this guy couldn't hear her at all, her little heart still hurt from anger. Why are there so many problems? Just a slight effort? How could there be so many easy things in this world? It all depends on her mood. Xiaomu turned her head proudly and kicked the door again. This time, the door opened as soon as he heard the sound. Xiaomu ran out without looking back. She heard Senior Xuanji call out from behind her. Second sect master. Remember the mission I gave you. Especially if you meet Tianjizi's junior disciples in the future, you must give them a good slap in the face. Arbor had already run far away, throwing the words of the Xuanji school's first-generation sect master to the back of her mind. She didn't know what kind of enmity this guy had with Senior Tianjizi, but he actually wanted her to slap Senior Tianjizi's disciple's face. And it had to be a good slap. What a baffling person. As a baby, she really didn't understand the world of the senior experts. Arbor shook her head and ran out of the forest. Suddenly, she heard a roar from behind. Chapter 1085. Turning around, she saw the giant ape grinning widely as it crawled over to her on all fours. It tilted its fat head and smiled charmingly naively. "I'll walk by myself," Arbor said as she spread open her hand. The giant ape retracted its furry arm and glanced at her in embarrassment. Suddenly, it threw a pile of items in front of her. Arbor. What else could she say? Weren't these the entrance fees she had swindled from other people? The spirit stones that little Sixth-Jung had handed over. The short spiritual dagger that Wei Nanshu had handed over was embedded with a row of red, green, and blue gems. The demonic cult's holy maiden Sikong Fuling had given her 2 4-winged jade-eyed tiger canines. It really had everything that one could wish for. Xiaomu rummaged through that trash pile and took out Wei Nanshu's short spiritual blade and another high-level mystic weapon bow and arrow. She placed them in her hands to cushion them. She hung the short dagger on her waist and carried the bow and arrow on her back. As for the rest of the pile, Arbor didn't refuse anything and put them all into her inner world. Sigh. She really had to reluctantly accept a pile of scrap metal. The giant ape tilted its head and grinned happily as it watched her skillfully put away the items. It then turned around and led her through the valley, returning to the place where everyone was gathered in a short while. Seeing her return, Xiaomi happily went up to her. "Younger sister, did you get your reward?" Arbor showed her the bow and arrow on her back and the short dagger on her waist. Xiaomi was delighted to see them. "Not bad, not bad. A mystic weapon and a spiritual weapon. This senior Xuanji is really quite generous." Arbor inwardly disdained her. That person didn't give the reward for nothing. There were still 1, 2, 3 for lousy conditions. However, her expression didn't change, and she still wore a stoic expression as she nodded reluctantly in agreement. At this time, Wei Nanshu suddenly shot in front of Arbor, his eyes staring intently at the short dagger hanging on her waist. Fuck! Wasn't that the spiritual weapon he handed over to Senior Giant Ape? At this moment, it was actually hanging on the little girl's waist. The row of red, blue, and green gemstones on the scabbard was custom-made by him. Every single one of them was extremely valuable. Naturally, he could recognize it at a glance. Wei Nanshu was fuming with anger. He pointed at the dagger hanging on Arbor's waist and angrily asked, "Why do you have this? What are you doing? Red eyebrows and green eyes staring at my sister. Are you tired of living?" Without another word, Xiaomi stepped forward and defended him. A grown man yelling at a little girl. "Isn't it very interesting? You, get out of the way." Wei Nanshu said angrily, "I gave this dagger to Senior Giant Ape 8 days ago. Why are you here now? A reward." Arbor looked at him as if he was an idiot. Wei Nanshu choked on her words and didn't know what to say. The dagger was indeed his, but he had already handed it over to the giant ape. Now that Senior Xuanji insisted on giving the dagger to Miss Qiao as a reward, what could he do? Other than forcibly suppressing his anger, he had no other choice. Dong 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 dong. The giant ape took heavy steps and threw a stone tablet in front of everyone. Written on it, "In this round of trial, you will be thrown into the cold pond. As long as you can persist in the cold pond for 7 days, you will have the opportunity to meet Senior Xuanji. Work hard, do your best. Secret treasures and spiritual weapons are all waiting for you in front." Chapter 1086. Arbor looked at the stone tablet and silently rolled her eyes. This Senior Xuanji was too good at tricking people. She didn't even have a small reward like the Xuanji pill, yet she was still using secret treasures to lure people. The giant ape impatiently reached out and patted the stone tablet. "Participants of the trial, please press your palm on the stone tablet, and the timer will be activated immediately. Those who leave the water before the time is up will be deemed to have failed the trial." This time, even the usually bold and reckless idiot Bai Li hesitated a little. He and his sister Bai Li Zhen looked at each other. "If you don't participate in the second round of the trial, you will be forcefully transported out within 5 days. Fan Xiuming gritted his teeth and stepped forward. There is no other choice. Hong Bai saw that even Fan Xiuming, this timid opponent, had gone up to press his palm, and hurriedly walked over. unwilling to be left behind. The two of them pressed their palms one after the other. Then their bodies were enveloped by a white light, and they were immediately transported out. Arbor watched them leave one by one, and exchanged glances with Xiaomi. She walked over to her side, and stuffed a fire talisman into her hand. "Don't force yourself." Xiaomi nodded, and was transported out in the next second. Arbor saw that the surroundings were empty, and everyone had left. She took out a meat bun from her inner world and took a bite. She turned her head, and saw the giant ape baring its teeth at her, and putting on an exasperated expression. Arbor hurriedly looked down at herself. What's wrong? What's wrong? She had already advanced a level. Compared to most of the people here, she was already hardworking enough. Alright. Why was he still looking at her with that expression? Suddenly, the giant ape grabbed her small hand, and pressed it directly on the stone tablet. Arbor widened her eyes. The next second, she felt her body lighten, and she was also transported out. The most despicable thing was that the ape even snatched the meat bun that she had only taken a small bite out of. The bone-chilling cold water enveloped Arbor, causing her to tremble slightly. Then, just like when she came, a warm current flowed out from her chest and flowed around her body, causing her to unconsciously stretch out her arms and legs and paddle in the pool. This feeling of being surrounded by water and being completely enveloped by the power of water was really not bad. This cold pool was the one connected to the entrance. It was just that the water here was colder than the one at the entrance. However, this was not a big deal. Arbor swam around in this pool, as if she was having fun. When she focused her gaze, she saw that not far away, the Ing brothers had covered themselves in a defensive barrier, and were shivering in the water, their faces ashen. These two people looked rather pitiful. Xiaomu swam over cheerfully while swinging her little legs. She then circled around the duo's defensive barrier twice. Ing Jian was standing inside the defensive barrier. Through the transparent barrier, he was trembling with fear as he looked at the little girl, who was circling around them. "What are you trying to do?" Ing Jian's eyes were about to fall out of their sockets. Arbor swam around 3 times and stopped in front of them. She muttered to herself, "I wonder how powerful my Vajra little jade hands will be in the cold pool water?" With that, the jade in her hand flashed, and the Vajra talisman activated. Arbor's small hand was like a steel claw, directly grabbing at the defensive barrier in front of Ing Jian. Thud! The first claw was blocked by the defensive barrier. Chapter 1087. Arbor's eyes lit up. Unwilling to give up, it stretched out its claws again. A second claw, a third claw. Upon seeing this, the third prince, Ing Fa, had already quietly retreated into the depths of the water. Although the water pressure in the deep waters increased, and the amount of profound energy required to maintain the defensive barrier would definitely be greater. The most important thing right now was to leave this little devil's claws. Stop joking around. Did this little devil think that this defensive barrier was indestructible? That would consume a lot of profound energy. Not only did it have to withstand the water pressure, but it also had to withstand the little devil's attacks. The loss of profound energy would definitely be faster. They still had to persevere in this godforsaken place for 7 days. Ing Fa secretly complained in his heart. He felt that he might not even be able to persevere for a single day. But now that he had been sent out, it had not even been 15 days. He did not even get the consolation prize, the Star Jade Pill. Wasn't this trip to the Mystic Realm a joke? If word got out, he would definitely be laughed at. Especially if his brothers from the opposing forces were to find out about this. They would definitely exaggerate about him, and show him how incompetent he was. Arbor naturally knew that Ing Fa had sneaked away, but now that Ing Jian was in front of him, it did not matter whether Ing Fa was present or not. With both old and new grudges added together, Arbor planned to settle things with this Ing Jian. Seeing this person standing inside the defensive barrier with such a ridiculous expression, it was as if he had eaten a mouthful of feces. She on the third claw. A small crack appeared on Ing Jian's defensive barrier. When Arbor saw this, he immediately became spirited. This Vajra talisman could still break other people's defensive barriers, but it was a pity that he had clawed it too many times. On the 8th claw, the defensive barrier on Ing Jian's body suddenly cracked. His entire person also fell out of the defensive barrier in a sorry state, miserably falling into the water. Immediately, he gulped down a large mouthful of ice water. Arbor was satisfied. Stretching out his leg, he used all his strength to kick the cold pond water. After swimming one round around Ing Jian's sprawled body, he waved his hand at him and turned his head to leave. Fuck. Ing Jian's current state of mind was absolutely dumbfounded to the extreme. This little devil, after messing around for a while and breaking his defensive barrier, he left in such an infuriating manner. In a fit of anger, Ing Jian kicked the water to chase after Qiao Mu. But to his surprise, the icy water in this glacial pond was very strange. After his entire body was enveloped by the icy water, he felt like he was in an ice cellar in the underworld. His entire body felt heavy from head to toe, and it felt like a boulder was pressing down on his chest, making it difficult for him to breathe. Arbor saw the crown prince of the Eastern Ing Kingdom angrily shout in the water, and was forced to gulp down a large mouthful of ice water. His big eyes couldn't help but brighten. He waved his small hand at him in annoyance, and then went to find his second target. That's right, he was looking for trouble with the demonic saintess. It was rare for her to be like a fish in water. Others were in such a miserable state. If she didn't take this opportunity to hit them while they were down, how could she live up to the nicknames of Little Fiend and Little Devil that others had given her? Arbor grinned and swam around the pool, but he didn't see any trace of the saintess. She clearly saw Sikong Fulling being transported in with her own eyes. Why was there no trace of her now? Could it be that this fellow also used an invisibility talisman? Arbor's mind stirred, and he opened his spiritual eye to look around. Not long after, he indeed found Sikong Fulling's figure in a corner at the bottom of the pool. She really knew how to hide. Chapter 1088. Arbor's figure, which was about to swim over, suddenly paused. Not far away, he saw Sikong Fulling squatting inside the defensive barrier and gingerly picking up grains of fine sand-like sparkling objects at the bottom of the water. There were still many of these sparkling objects in the corner she was in. Sikong Fulling picked them up very cautiously. Her entire body was curled up inside the defensive barrier, with only 2 fingers sticking out to pick up those sparkling grains of sand one by one. Could this be a forging material called frigid star sand? Arbor felt that he should have guessed the truth, so he quietly swam over and also cast an invisibility talisman on himself. He just openly stared at Sikong Fulling, who was energetically picking up grains of sand one by one. After she finished picking up all the glacial star sand in the surrounding area, Arbor immediately moved. In the water, she could congeal all kinds of water forms at will. Thus, when Sikong Fulling saw in astonishment that a pair of giant hands formed from water suddenly appeared in front of her and directly slapped her defensive barrier, she was unable to resist at all. She only felt a terrifying force rush toward her chest and spit out a mouthful of blood with a pft sound. The entire defensive barrier was instantly torn apart. The small bag of glacial star sand that she had just collected in her hand all fell into that giant hand formed from water. Who is it? Sikong Fulling screeched furiously, hiding your head and shrinking your tail. Shameless. Arbor directly summoned the giant hand of water back to his side and took the small bag of glacial star sand in the palm of its hand. Opening it, he saw that there were as many as 50 to 60 grains of glacial star sand. He was instantly overjoyed. She didn't know how to forge weapons, but she couldn't resist people who liked to prattle in her ear when they had nothing better to do. Something like, if there are any such materials, I can help you continue to improve the ferrule. I guarantee that you'll be even more adept at it. Arbor happily put the glacial star sand that Sikong Fulling had painstakingly collected into his inner world. Afterward, his figure appeared in front of Sikong Fulling in an ostentatious manner. By this time, Sikong Fulling had already torn off that invisibility talisman on her body. She was so angry that her eyes and mouth were practically crooked, and her entire body was trembling. One had to know that when she discovered that there was a rare divine-level forging material, the frigid star sand, she was overjoyed. In order to prevent others from spying on such a treasure, she even secretly stuck an invisibility talisman on herself, intending to quietly collect it. With these 50 to 60 grains of glacial star sand in his hands, this trip was not in vain. It should be known that frigid star sand might not be of much use in their lower star fields. But in the middle 6 prefectures, a single grain of frigid star sand could be auctioned off at an astronomical price. After all, in a lower star domain like Seacombe Planet, mystic weapon masters had already become legendary figures. Those ordinary weapon masters who only knew how to forge ordinary weapons would have no use for this kind of god-grade forging material, even if they were given it. Seacombe Fulling was really about to explode from anger at this moment. She had never seen such a vile, wretched girl. She had obviously snatched someone else's things, and still looked at you with an innocent expression. This face was really infuriating. If she hadn't known that Sir Cult Master valued this darn girl in front of her, she would have thought of a way to get rid of this wretched girl long ago when they first met. This would also prevent her from being so angry that she would ascend to heaven and leave her body. Return the frigid star sand. Seacombe Fulling took a deep breath. It's useless to you even if you want it. Arbor blinked and shook his head very resolutely. Chapter 1089. Not giving. Seacombe Fulling was about to explode from anger. How could there be such a vile brat in this world? Was it reasonable for her to rob on the spot? Don't show up if you don't give. She would have admitted that her skills were inferior, right? Yet you still had to show up and look at her innocently. Seacombe Fulling really wanted to rush up and slap this little imp to death. Lord Cult Master was crazy enough to think highly of such a vile character. How much of a masochist was he to ask for a beating? No wonder she got stabbed in the chest. She was asking for it. Seacombe Fulling bit her small lips and took a deep breath, secretly suppressing the anger that filled her belly. Miss Chiao, you're not an armament master, so this glacial star sand is of no use to you. I think you don't even know what the glacial star sand is used for. Arbor blinked. It's used to create divine artifacts. Without adding this, even a top-grade spirit artifact can't transform into a divine artifact. Seacombe Fulling looked at her in surprise. All right, even if you know what it's used for, you're not an armament master at all, right? It's a waste for this thing to fall into your hands. How about this? I'll buy it from you. When Seacombe Fulling said the last 5 words, she felt so aggrieved that she wanted to die. How did she, a dignified saint of the demonic cult, end up in this state? Arbor stretched out a pair of slender white hands and flipped it back and forth in the water. She asked curiously, "What do you have to offer?" "Spirit stones." Seacombe Fulling gnashed her teeth. You've heard of spirit stones, right? The basic resources for spiritual realm cultivation are the same as our magnetite. Of course I know. Arbor interrupted her with a "don't treat this baby like a fool" expression. She then asked, "How many spirit stones can you give?" 100 pieces. Middle-grade spirit stones. She gritted her teeth and gave a blood-vomiting price. Deal. Arbor nodded without hesitation and poked Seacombe Fulling with his little hand. Hand it over. Seacombe Fulling was stunned on the spot for quite a while before she took out a pouch of mid-grade spirit stones from her inner world with great joy, and tossed it to Chiao Mu. I'm not lying to you. This pouch of mid-grade spirit stones is good stuff that can support you for a period of time, even if you travel to the middle 6 prefectures. Arbor nodded, and then took out a brocade pouch embroidered with black datura flowers from his inner world. Upon seeing this, Seacombe Fulling gnashed her teeth in anger. This damned fellow. Even the brocade pouch was taken away by her. So shameless. However, seeing that she was able to return the glacial star sand brocade pouch to her, Seacombe Fulling's complexion also became a little better. At least she was tactful. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to leave the frigid pool's range with this bag of frigid star sand. Arbor opened the brocade pouch and looked through it for a long time, causing Seacombe Fulling's brows to jump as a bad premonition suddenly slid past her heart. Here for you. The little fellow picked out the tiniest grain of glacial star sand. With a slight wave of his little hand, he wrapped this grain of glacial star sand in a stream of water and threw it in front of the Holy Maiden. The Holy Maiden was stunned for a long time without any reaction. Then, the entire frigid pool was stirred up like boiling water and exploded with a boom. The demonic cult holy maiden let out a flustered and exasperated wail. I said 100 mid-grade spirit stones for a bag of glacial star sand. This fellow was really shameless. He actually had the nerve to pick out the tiniest grain of glacial star sand from the pouch for her. I'm going to kill you. Chapter 1090. Why didn't she ascend to the heavens? 100 mid-grade spirit stones actually gave her a speck of glacial star sand that was comparable to a speck of dust. She really didn't want to pay for infuriating people to death, right? Sikong Fuling was so angry that her chest heaved up and down as she panted heavily within the defensive barrier. She abruptly struck her palm into the water, and a huge wave crashed toward Arbor. Arbor escaped more nimbly than a fish. Kicking her 2 small feet in the water, she turned around and swam toward the surface of the glacial pond. How could Sikong Fuling allow her to escape after taking the benefits? With a furious roar, she unleashed her greatest underwater potential. Kicking her legs, she injected mystic energy into the defensive barrier, while vigorously paddling in the water, chasing after Arbor with a face full of resentment. The other people in the glacial pond had long sensed this unusual movement. Ing Fei's first suspect was that fellow Arbor, but hearing the fierce roar, it seemed to be that saint of the demonic cult, Her Excellency Sikong Fuling. Could it be that this Prince Mo consort bullied Sikong Fuling again? Heavens! Just how vile was this person's temperament? Never mind that she bullied their eldest crown prince, but now she even dared to shit on Sikong Fuling's head. She was truly reckless. When Sikong Fuling fought with her just now, she lost by half a notch. Did that crown princess think that Sikong Fuling's cultivation was inferior to hers? She was the saint of the demonic cult, and had countless trump cards in her hands. She definitely hadn't used her full strength yet. They should let that Prince Mo consort try kicking an iron plate, so that she wouldn't always look at them with disdain, and find trouble with them all the time. A huge wave rushed toward Arbor's back, as if she had a pair of eyes on the back of her head. When the huge wave was less than an inch away from her head, a huge palm formed from water directly slapped down that sky-high wave. Arbor kicked the water and swam freely while turning her head to glance at that fellow Sikong Fuling from time to time. Seeing that she was a little far away from her, she stopped and waited for her on the spot. Seeing that she was chasing after her, she hurriedly kicked her little legs and swam a few more times. After several times, Sikong Fuling was exhausted and battered. Her beautiful eyes glared angrily at the little imp in front of her through the heavy mist. If she could grab that brat's head right now, she would definitely press him to death. This damned brat was truly infuriating, but she couldn't do anything to him. This was what made Sikong Fuling most depressed. Suddenly, a huge black shadow appeared in the mist. Its bell-like eyes stared straight at him. If not for Sikong Fuling's audacity, she would have been frightened to death by it. The giant ape stretched out its drenched arm and picked up Xiao Mu, who was causing trouble everywhere. It was as if it was glaring at a disobedient child, and the anger in its eyes was too tangible for its own good. The giant ape's thoughts right now were probably, I told you to train properly in the water, but you're messing around everywhere and having so much fun. Was this appropriate? Arbor pursed his little mouth and protested. I've already discussed with you that you're not allowed to carry me around in the future? The giant ape carried the little fellow away from Sikong Fuling and the others, and tossed her into a corner at the bottom of the water. Then, it sat down in front of him like a freaking mountain and blocked the space around her. That's enough. Chapter 1091. Xiao Mu grumpily rolled her eyes at it. She poked its furry body with her little finger, but the giant ape didn't budge an inch. Arbor was somewhat helpless. Looking at the situation, the giant ape wanted to imprison her in this small place and let her cultivate properly for a few days. This fellow was truly conscientious in its duty, sparing no effort to urge her to work hard. Fine, let's cultivate then. Arbor waved her hand and opened the defensive mystic artifact. She sat inside the defensive barrier and began her 7-day cultivation journey. Opening the defensive barrier was because she wanted to set up a mystic guiding talisman formation around her small body. The mystic guiding talisman formation was drawn by her talisman paper, so it probably wouldn't be effective if wet. If she could draw jade talismans in the future, she wouldn't need to open the defensive barrier even in the water. The little fellow calmed down. The entire cold pond also quieted down. The most miserable one was Ingjian. After his defensive barrier was broken, he couldn't hold on for more than an hour in the bone-chilling cold pond water. At this time, he was lying on the ground beside the cold pond with a sorrowful cry, looking up at the dark blue sky in the mystic realm. It was as if his entire body was filled with lead. His body and even his spirit were abnormally heavy, so hateful that a white light suddenly covered his body, and Ingjian's heart instantly chilled. Not long after, he felt a strong force pulling at him, trying to transport him out of this mystic realm. No! No! Ingjian's duck-like voice let out an unpleasant shriek. He flipped over and desperately clung onto a huge rock beside the cold pond. His 10 fingers dug into the sand and water plants under the huge rock as he screamed, "No! I'm not going out. I haven't gotten any benefits yet. I can't go out." That ferocious power was irresistible. No matter how Ingjian screamed and cried in despair, in the blink of an eye, Ingjian, together with the rock, smashed into the wet, muddy ground full of dried grass and broken branches with a thud. The hard rock made his chest hurt, but he simply didn't have time to think about it and jumped up from the rock. He cut a sorry figure and was completely exhausted. Ingjian glanced back and immediately discovered that he had once again returned to the mystic beast forest. Ah! Ingjian roared at the sky. Damn it! He was really teleported out by the mystic realm. Damn it, damn it, damn it! Ingjian ran madly through the mystic beast forest, intending to find the cold pond at the entrance to the secret realm. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he searched, there was still no trace of the cold pool. Ingjian immediately sat down on the ground like a deflated ball. His heart was filled with a mixture of regret, disappointment, grief, and indignation. He hung his head dejectedly. Suddenly, a tiny mouse with a sharp mouth came out of the bushes and squeaked at him. This mouse was not even as big as one of his palms. The hair on its head was sparse, and a pair of small red eyes were staring at him. Ingjian's heart was so stifled and uncomfortable that he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to it. He directly kicked the mouse, causing it to somersault and squeak before it retreated back into the bushes in fright. Ingjian hung his head and sighed for a while. He glanced at the rock from the corner of his eyes and suddenly stood up, excitedly pouncing to the side of the huge rock. This was the rock he carried out of the mystic realm. He didn't know if there was anything special about it. Chapter 1092. Ingjian's entire body was sprawled on top of the rock, constantly rubbing against the huge rock, turning it over and over to examine it. Soon after, he was disappointed to find that it was just an ordinary rock. Because it had been washed by the cold pond water for many years, it seemed to be emitting traces of cold air, and was much darker than the usual rocks. Ingjian let out a long sigh, then lay down under a huge crooked old tree. Raising his head, he looked at the dense mass of old tree branches that covered his line of sight. Layers upon layers of luxuriant branches and leaves blocked out the sunlight above. Not even a trace of light could pass through. He held a signal device in his hand and released it to inform his subordinates to come and receive him. Soon after, a wave of physical and mental exhaustion overwhelmed him, and unknowingly, he fell asleep under the old tree. Not long after Ingjian fell asleep, a sparsely haired sharp-mouthed rat suddenly drilled out from behind the grass nest, its little red eyes glancing at Ingjian. Squeak, squeak. Behind the grass nest, hundreds and thousands of sharp-mouthed little rats swarmed out, excitedly surrounding Ingjian. Ingjian was awakened by the pain of his skin being bitten, and as soon as he opened his eyes, he felt pain in his eyelids, as if his entire eye socket was bitten by something, startling him into screaming loudly. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The group of rats rejoiced, and at this time, there were close to 10,000 rats crazily surrounding Ingjian. Ingjian's eyes were dark, and he fiercely chopped out 2 palms of profound energy. But how could it be so easy to disperse a group of over 10,000 rats? After hitting a few dozen, the remaining thousands and tens of thousands of rats swarmed over, covering the sky and covering the earth, giving him almost no time to breathe. In a split second, His entire body was submerged in the shape of the Chinese character. If one looked down from a high altitude, they would be able to see that Ing Jian's body was completely covered by the dense group of rats. And in the blink of an eye, his 4 white and chubby arms and legs were gnawed until only 4 bones were left. Very quickly, Ing Jian's screams were drowned out by this group of rats. After about half an hour, when Ing Jian's subordinates found their master's location using the signal device, other than a thick layer of withered branches and leaves, they didn't see anything else. The few of them exchanged a strange look and automatically spread out to search the surrounding area. My Qiao's section break. 3 days later, Ing Fa, Fan Xiaoming, and Hong Bai were also forcefully teleported out of the secret realm. Survival of the fittest, and the winner was king. Arbor didn't know that something big had happened in the outside world. It had even alerted the hidden forces of the 6 prefectures. Royal City East Palace sleeping chamber. Emolian stood up as usual. When she raised her hand, she silently looked down at her slightly stiff left index finger and frowned. The hand that had been poisoned by Ding Tingding was gradually losing feeling. He had taken a lot of antidote pills in the past few days. He had also used the medicinal power to treat himself, but it didn't seem to be very effective. However, Ding Tingding's idea of poisoning him to death within a few days was still a bit too naive. Emolian's eyes flickered slightly. She wrapped her left hand with a rich medicinal power. After a few minutes of treatment, the stiff symptoms improved. However, he also knew that the stiffness would increase the next day. It was as if the medicine could only alleviate the pain, but not cure the poison completely. Not long after she got up, Huifeng's voice quietly sounded from the window. "Your Highness." Huifeng had been by her side for many years, so Emolian was already familiar with his personality. Chapter 1093. The sky had just brightened when he arrived. Although his tone was gentle, there was a hint of urgency in it. Something big must have happened. "Come in." At Prince Mo's command, Huifeng floated in through the window and bowed without looking sideways. "Your Highness, something big has happened." Emolian turned to stare at him. "Why are you so alarmed?" Huifeng hurriedly spilled the beans and quickly said, "This morning, Siming Manor's high priest announced an exciting piece of news. He said that he divined that a Bloodfire Phoenix egg will be born in the Mystic Beast Forest within the next few days." Siming Manor, one of the 4 great manors, had never cared about the mundane world, and was even more reclusive than Wuxia Manor. Why would it suddenly? What else did he say? Huifeng shook his head. Nothing. He only said that the Bloodfire Phoenix egg will be born in the Mystic Beast Forest at a certain time. But he didn't mention the specific time. Even so, it's already caused all sides to become restless and restless. The 2 sects, 5 factions, 4 great manors, and 8 great patrician families have all made a move. In addition, aside from Shentian Prefecture, the other 5 prefectures have also made a move. Ani Prefecture and Luotian Prefecture in particular have each sent an extremely powerful team to the Mystic Beast Forest, planning to fight over the Bloodfire Phoenix egg. Emolian's handsome face darkened slightly, but then she seemed to have thought of something, and her expression softened. Let them be. In any case, Jojo is still inside the secret realm right now, so he won't run into those people. Yes. Keep a close eye on them. Emolian curled his lips into a cold smile. Come inform me when the people of the 5 prefectures are fighting to the death, and both sides are wounded. Huifeng cracked a smile and nodded in understanding. Yes, Your Highness. At the same time, Arbor, who was completely unaware of what was happening in the outside world, was quietly immersed in the world of cultivation. Inside his conscious, the 12 jade slips that had been rolled into a ball suddenly lit up. The 6th jade slip flew out and unfurled. Lines of small characters appeared on it, and were quickly absorbed by Arbor. Xiaomu abruptly opened her eyes, joy creeping into her eyes. The 6th jade slip of the Golden Talisman Jade Tome was opened at this moment. Arbor sat cross-legged inside the defensive barrier and took out a gold-beaded talisman pen. He summoned a dozen blank ebony pieces and began to draw new talismans. There were quite a few new talismans that he had learned, such as the Teleportation Talisman, the Earth Talisman, the Wood Talisman, and the Thunder Talisman. In addition, there was also a strange and special talisman, Rapid Cultivation Talisman. She first drew a teleportation talisman. She had already tested the magical effects of this kind of talisman before. That's right, it was inside the Great Sea Monastery's pacification pagoda. Xiaomu took out 2 talismans brimming with blue light, and tossed one to Aoyi. Afterwards, the 2 people disappeared from courtesan Zheng's sight. At that time, they had used teleportation talismans to directly move from inside the pagoda to the monastery's rear courtyard. After that, she quietly went to the Nimpan Tower from the backyard, looking for an opportunity to angrily insult Princess Anam. The 2 teleportation talismans from before were the welfare demonstration talismans, given by the Golden Talisman Jade Tome. Arbor had always regretted that she couldn't draw a teleportation talisman, because she thought it was very useful. Now she could finally draw one. Teleportation talisman. Move to a single person within 2 li. This was the property of a high-level talisman. Arbor suspected that when she could draw yellow-grade, or even black-grade talismans in the future, she might be able to modify this teleportation talisman into a directional movement. Chapter 1094. However, it wasn't bad to be able to move 2 li in a fixed direction now. It was just that sometimes, if she wasn't oriented, she might fall into a nearby pond. But that wasn't a problem. It was fine as long as the teleportation talisman was useful. Arbor pursed her lips, unable to hide her good mood. Squatting inside her defensive barrier, she carefully drew the talisman in her hand. As for the Thunder Spirit Talisman, Wood Spirit Talisman, and Earth Spirit Talisman, their effects were similar to the Fire Spirit Talisman and Water Spirit Talisman, but their attributes were different. In this way, she had gathered all of her high-grade 5 spirit talismans. Even if she couldn't comprehend the power of the 5 spirits, with the 5 spirit talisman, she could still trick others in a battle. Thus, this kind of 5 spirit talisman was extremely popular in the middle 6 prefectures, and even the upper 3 provinces. Because high-grade talismans could be activated with mystic energy, even a low-level mystic cultivator could inject mystic energy to use this kind of 5 spirit talisman. It was definitely an excellent talisman for protecting one's life at home. After drawing several dozen of each of the newly learned talismans, Arbor started to ponder how to draw that strange rapid cultivation talisman. Talismans and talismans were basically born from the same root, so to Arbor, they were all the same when drawn. It was just that most talisman masters were more vicious and evil, so they were looked down upon by people of the righteous path. However, this kind of rapid cultivation talisman couldn't be considered a harmful item. It was just that the usage of this talisman was very strange. Its description was as follows. Rapid cultivation talisman. The user will seal off their 5 senses for 15 days, completely isolate themselves from the outside world, lose their 7 emotions and 6 desires, and block off all of their original memories. In the depths of their mind, only one thought would be generated, and that was cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Continue cultivating. For 15 days, it will absorb all the power between heaven and earth to the greatest extent. Mystic energy absorbs mystic energy. Spiritual energy absorbs spiritual energy. And even this rapid cultivation talisman was really strange. In the past, when she studied talismans and talismans, she had never seen such a detailed explanation. This rapid cultivation talisman, just the explanation alone was written on an entire page. At the end, there were even words of encouragement. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and use the rapid cultivation talisman. You will truly feel the rapid increase in your cultivation and spiritual senses. Join us. Cultivator, success is waiting for you ahead. Arbor, what kind of weird charm was this? To block all 5 senses for 15 days, a person would lose sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch at the same time. Then what was the meaning of life? This must be the feeling of chewing wax when eating chicken thighs. Oh, that's right, I still have to block his memory. No. How is this a quick cultivation talisman? It was simply a death talisman. However, looking at the description of this talisman, it was quite good at causing trouble. It was very hot, and could raise one's mood in an instant. However, She only drew it and held it in her hands to take a look. He thought to himself that after he left this mystic realm, he should find a little mystic cultivator. He didn't know to conduct an experiment first. Let's see how much that person can grow in 15 days, that there shouldn't be any trouble. Looking at the description, it didn't seem like a bad talisman. It was just that the conditions for rapid cultivation were a little tricky. The little guy grabbed the quick cultivation talisman and muttered to himself for a while. When he raised his head, he was shocked by the big furry face in front of his defensive barrier. Fuck, what the hell was this giant ape doing? It was so close to his defensive barrier. At first glance, she was really frightened by its big face. The giant ape suddenly grinned at her, and even squinted its little black eyes at her. Chapter 1095. Suddenly, that hairy hand smoothly passed through her defensive barrier, and directly grabbed the rapid cultivation talisman in her hand. Arbor suddenly felt her heart protrude, and her eyelids twitched heavily. What the hell? It mustn't be what she was thinking. That the giant ape abruptly threw the rapid cultivation talisman at Arbor, and quickly shook it off. It then grinned at Arbor with a simple and honest expression. You. Before the word cheat could come out of her mouth, Arbor knew that the situation was far from good. This rapid cultivation talisman. Oh no, this disaster-courting talisman was about to take effect. The only thing worth rejoicing over was that she was still inside the secret realm and couldn't jump out no matter how much she cultivated. However, what she didn't know was that when the rapid cultivation talisman activated and she entered a frenzied cultivation mode, she subconsciously started to refine the secret realm. At this time, she mobilized all the mystic energy in the secret realm and gathered it around her in an unending stream. But this time, she was completely unaware of it. Little Sixth Zheng, Sikong Fuling and the others, who were still inside the frigid pond, abruptly opened their eyes and looked up incredulously at the surface of the water. They saw that the depths of the frigid pond had been completely enveloped by the dense mystic energy rushing down from above. The mystic energy was so dense that it was visible to the naked eye. Clumps and clumps of mystic energy sank into the water and vigorously rushed toward the nooks and crannies of the frigid pond. The giant ape kicked its legs with joy and roared a few times to express its joy. At this time, Arbor was already completely immersed in a frenzied state of cultivation. She didn't know that the entire frigid pond was being stirred up by her, and the frigid pond water was rushing straight up. Exclamation point. Under the pressure of the powerful mystic energy, Bailey Wu, Xiaomi, and Akito's young lady, Akir, were the first to be unable to resist. They even spat out a mouthful of blood and rolled out of the frigid pond. Immediately after, the three of them were caught by the secret realm and instantly thrown out. Wei Nanshu, Jin Hongwuan, and Ali were also thrown out of the secret realm. When they appeared in the mystic beast forest, they immediately vomited a few mouthfuls of blood with bitter expressions. She only felt that her heart and lungs were being squeezed by that terrifying profound energy, making it extremely unbearable. In the entire mystic realm, apart from Arbor, only Sikong Fuling, Qin Susu, Duan Siren, Little Six Zheng and Bailey Zhen remained. These 5 people withstood the enormous pressure and tried their best to take a share of the thick profound energy. However, the truth was just that frustrating. They clearly saw such a dense profound energy hanging above their heads, but they couldn't even enjoy a trace of it. This was like a person who had walked into a gourmet shop. There were hundreds of different types of delicacies in front of him, but his stomach was not good. He couldn't even swallow the plain porridge and side dishes. That was how sad it was. Under their helplessness, the 5 of them successively jumped out of the wintry pool. And then they glanced at each other, and all of them were extremely helpless and speechless. A moment later, the 5 of them were also teleported out of the secret realm. Before parting, Duan Siren sighed and said, I didn't expect that after entering the mystic beast forest secret realm this time, I didn't even obtain a Xuanji pill as a reward. What a failure. When the others heard this, they couldn't help but smile wryly. It went without saying that their hearts were filled with disappointment. At this time, Arbor was like a whale sucking in water, continuously absorbing the dense profound energy in this place. It wasn't until a day and night later that it completely absorbed all the profound energy in the entire area. Rumble. The mystic realm then collapsed. Chapter 1096. Arbor's plain-colored figure appeared under an old, crooked tree. She was holding a round, transparent mystic beast forest heart that she had refined. Following her instincts, she put this mystic beast forest heart into her inner world. Arbor raised her head slightly. Her black eyes were as still as water as she gazed ahead. There was a deathly stillness in front of her. If she could feel anything now, she would probably beat the ground with her small fists and yell at her miscalculation. She had thought that after the damned giant ape stuck a disaster-courting talisman on her, she would be able to cultivate in the mystic realm for 15 days before coming out. At that time, she would have recovered her senses and memories anyway, so it wouldn't matter much. But the truth was, the second day after the disaster-courting talisman attached to her body, she had refined the mystic realm and tricked herself into being transported out. There were 14 days left until the disaster-courting talisman's removal. During these 14 days, she would be a blind, deaf, and mute person, a jade carving without a trace of emotions or desires. The little fellow's pitch-black eyes appeared especially translucent under the night sky, and her pupils shone faintly. At first glance, anyone would be able to tell that this was a little blind person. Oh no, it was a little piece of wood that had lost her senses. Xiaomu strolled aimlessly in the forest, not knowing exactly where she wanted to go. She only knew that she was still sensing the mystic energy in the mystic beast forest as she moved. Now there was only one thought in her mind: cultivate. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. She wanted to find a place with the densest mystic energy in this mystic beast forest and continue cultivating. Now, no one could stop her from crazily cultivating. Work hard to increase her cultivation. Work hard to increase her spiritual senses. In Xiaomu's heart, a slogan resounded loudly and clearly that she would kill anyone who dared to hinder her cultivation. Absolutely not show mercy. This kind of rapid cultivation talisman was abnormal in that it really did what the prompt said. It completely blocked one's 5 senses and sealed one's past memories. It really made one's entire being, from the body to the heart, honestly shout out one goal: cultivation. If Arbor knew that she had been tricked out of the mystic realm and was walking aimlessly in the mystic beast forest, she might have given the giant ape senior a good beating. At this time, many adventurer teams had gathered in the periphery of the mystic beast forest after hearing the news. Of course, they were here for the rarely seen Bloodfire Phoenix egg. How formidable was Simon Manor's high priest! He had divined that the Bloodfire Phoenix egg would descend into the mystic beast forest in the next few days. So his words were definitely not false. Everyone came with the same goal, but there was only one phoenix egg. It was hard to say who would get it. The entire mystic beast forest was turbulent and unpredictable. The experts of the 5 prefectures had gathered, and the people of the Heavenly Tao sect, Daybreak sect, and the 5 factions were all rushing towards the mystic beast forest. When they received the news, they had already rushed over. However, it took them some time to get there. By the time the Heavenly Tao sect's sect master, Situ Min, arrived with a group of Heavenly Tao sect disciples, the mystic beast forest was already bustling with noise and excitement. Brother Situ, Daybreak sect's sect master, Liang Wanshan, led a group of disciples and cupped their hands at him. You've also come after hearing about the Bloodfire Phoenix egg, right? That's right, Brother Liang. Simon Manor's high priest doesn't easily make a sound, but once he does, it truly alarms the entire Seacombe planet. Ha ha ha. Sitamin also laughed. I heard that even the people from the 4 great manors appeared together this time. It can be seen how attractive this Bloodfire Phoenix egg is. Chapter 1097. Liang Qingqing couldn't help but ask, Father, do you think there's a problem with this phoenix egg? Why would Simon Manor's high priest make such an important piece of news public? Can't their Simon Manor secretly come and take the phoenix egg away? Qingqing's words are reasonable. Liang Wanshan smiled. Father is also thinking this way. In any case, we don't care. We're just here to join in the fun. If we can't obtain the phoenix egg, everything will depend on fate. Sitamin also let out a long laugh. Sect Master Liang is extremely right. Then let's go. The group chatted for a bit before following behind their sect master into the Mystic Beast Forest in a hubbub. Not long after the two teams left, the Mu family's patriarch, Mu Boming, appeared at the entrance of the forest with the Mu family's young disciples, Mu Zijuan, Mu Jilan, and the others. After the order was given, the Mu clan also set out for the Mystic Beast Forest in unison, each of their youthful faces carrying traces of anticipation. If they could obtain the ancient Bloodfire Phoenix egg, they would definitely be able to raise their strength by a large margin. Whether or not they could form a contract with it was another matter. At the very least, there was hope for now. The crowd was surging with emotions as the cultivators used their own abilities and rapidly rushed over. At this time, Arbor had already found a place with the densest mystic energy in the center of the Mystic Beast Forest and started cultivating. Soon, the mystic energy in the entire Mystic Beast Forest was mobilized by her again and gathered above her head. After using the rapid cultivation talisman and absorbing all the mystic energy in the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm, her cultivation had already skipped the gradual attainment realm from level 13 Mystic Cultivator realm to the initial success realm. At this moment, she felt that she was about to break through the barrier of phenomenal success. With this kind of abnormal cultivation speed, breaking through from the initial success stage to the phenomenal success stage in less than a day and night, it would truly scare a large number of people to death. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. These words kept floating in Darling Qiao's heart. She immersed herself in cultivation again without blinking. Although her 5 senses were completely blocked, her spiritual awareness grew abnormally ferociously. Originally, his spiritual sense was only at the first level, but in the past few days, it had crazily grown by 2 levels. Now it had reached the 3rd level of spiritual sense. This was a rather outrageous matter. It should be known that an ordinary person's Xian sense was only about 60% of their cultivation. This was already considered not bad. In other words, a level 13 Great Mystic Cultivator's Mystic Conscious could be considered perfect if it reached level 7 at most. As for Arbor, although his cultivation had yet to break through to the spirit realm, his conscious had already broken through to the spirit realm, and his spiritual sense had already broken through to the 3rd level. Such a heaven-defying act was truly unique in the world. The growth of one's profound sense was much more difficult than one's own cultivation. This was something that everyone knew. What could it be that his profound sense could increase by 1 level in 1 or 2 days? That was absolutely impossible. Arbor cultivated diligently in the midst of this impossibility, wholeheartedly cultivating to the end. Inside the Mystic Beast Forest, huge waves had long since surged to the heavens. Moreover, the people from the 8 great patrician families had all come after hearing the news and were planning to try their luck in the Mystic Beast Forest. In any case, regardless of whether or not he could get the Phoenix egg, it was just an activity. In other words, the important thing was to participate. Chapter 1098. Just as they were about to part ways, they suddenly saw masses of surging mystic energy in the sky above the Mystic Beast Forest swiftly heading in a certain direction. The 2 family heads were so excited that their faces trembled. A phoenix egg! A phoenix egg has come into being! Yang Fengyan excitedly grabbed eldest young Sirchin's arm while wearing a half-veil. Eldest young Sirchin dodged to the side, evading her claws, and glanced at her with a spurious smile. Shout after you see clearly. If an ancient Bloodfire Phoenix egg comes into being, it should be accompanied by golden red light, and the flames should burn most of the sky. How is this some phoenix egg coming into being? It seemed like someone was cultivating in the forest and sucking in all the mystic energy in the world. TSK. But this was also quite extravagant. With so much mystic energy surging over, was this person trying to reach the peak of level 15 Mystic Cultivator cultivation? When Yang Fengyan saw her cousin evade her hand imperceptibly, she couldn't help but pout in annoyance. Eldest cousin, the high priest didn't clearly say when the phoenix egg would appear. Could it be that the phoenix egg still hasn't come into being after we stay in this forest for 10 days to half a month? That's hard to say. A woman with beautiful features and a plump figure leaned against eldest young Sir Qin, and imperceptibly swept a glance at Yang Fengyan, before sneering lightly. Yang Fengyan's face darkened, and she was about to berate when she heard family head Qin whisper, "Let's go. Let's go over there and take a look." The direction he was pointing at was precisely where the mystic energy was surging. Arbor didn't know that a large group of people was rushing to her location. Although her 5 senses and memories were temporarily blocked, she still had her instincts. Before she entered closed-door cultivation to absorb mystic energy, she had already set up several talisman matrices nearby. Right now, she was at the critical juncture of breaking through to phenomenal success as a level 13 mystic cultivator, so she naturally didn't have the time to pay attention to the outside world. As for Do Heping, Mu Boming, and Qin Guilu's group, it was impossible for them to immediately discern the direction and rush to Arbor's location in a short time. After all, the entire Mystic Beast Forest was enormous. Even though they were looking at a mountain, they were still a long way from Qiaomu. Ding dang ding dang. The clear and melodious footbell rang nearby. A slender figure appeared at the periphery of the array, and curiously sized up the situation. He clearly felt that the wind and clouds were surging in this place, and the profound energy was rather dense. So why didn't he see a single person? Sikong Fuling, the saintess of the demonic cult, looked up curiously at the sky. Above the head of the pitch-black trees that intersected with each other, waves of profound energy were like an upside-down whirlpool, pouring down towards a single point. Impressive. Sikong Fuling's eyes moved slightly. Suddenly a voice shouted, "Princess, it's her." Sikong Fuling. Sikong Fuling turned her head to look with a mocking smile hanging from the corner of her mouth. "A princess of 1,000 gold? You can't run into this forest where thousands of beasts are hibernating to court death." Before he could finish his words, he suddenly felt a tyrannical wave of profound energy coming straight at his chest. That damned guy. He actually attacked her without saying a word. While Sikong Fuling was speechless, her entire body dodged to the left, evading this swift and fierce palm strike. When she turned around to take a look, she saw that the person's palm strike had instantly blasted half of an ancient tree next to her. With a crack, the entire tree toppled over and smashed fiercely in her direction. A severe glint flashed across Sikong Fuling's eyes, and with a furious shout, she swiftly sent a punch flying over. Chapter 1099. Borrowing the force of her punch, Sikong Fuling swiftly leaped into the air, grabbed the ancient tree branch above her, and flipped to the top of the tree. Her charming eyes gazed frostily at the 2 women, who were slowly walking out of the pitch-black forest. The woman in the lead was exceptionally bewitching. Purple shadows were drawn out around her eyes using a special flower juice, embellishing her beautiful little face even more incomparably gorgeous. Her long purple strapless dress trailed on the ground, perfectly outlining her lithe figure. She was a stunner, but unfortunately, her brain wasn't good, and she attacked indiscriminately. Sikong Fuling glanced coldly at the newcomer. "Who are you?" She didn't look like a princess from any country. How could there be a princess dressed so bewitchingly, like a prostitute from a brothel? Audacious! You actually dare to be so rude in front of our Raksha princess? Hurry and kneel down and kowtow to our princess to apologize. Startled, Sikong Fuling turned to look at the Raksha princess in disbelief. You're the Raksha ghost sex Raksha princess?" The Raksha princess gave her a bewitching smile, but there was no smile in her eyes. "Apart from me, have you seen a princess more bewitching and beautiful than me?" The Raksha princess' narcissism was unmistakable the moment she opened her mouth. Although Sikong Fuling also felt that she was very beautiful, she absolutely wouldn't be so shameless as to praise herself in front of a stranger. Thus she chuckled, her laughter filled with mockery and contempt. The female disciple behind the Raksha princess bristled and jumped up. "Princess, she's mocking you." The Raksha princess's lips twitched with a fake smile, and she instantly shot toward Sikong Fuling. "No need for you to remind me. This princess has eyes and naturally can see it." Sikong Fuling, today is the day of your death. Enraged, Sikong Fuling attacked the Raksha princess's chest with a palm. "You old witch. My demonic cult has no enmity with your Raksha ghost sect. Why are you suddenly attacking me? Humph. Little slut. You must be eliminated today. Don't say anything else. The Raksha princess blinked her beautiful eyes and directly reached out to grab Sikong Fuling's head. Sikong Fuling countered with a backhand strike and clashed with the Raksha princess's right claw, following which, she staggered back several steps and forcefully suppressed the mouthful of blood that was about to flow out of her mouth. Damn it, what kind of cultivation does this Luosha princess have? She seems to be stronger than me. Haha, a mere level 12 mystic cultivator dares to strut around in front of this princess. The Raksha princess's cold and beautiful eyes stared at Sikong Fuling like a venomous snake. She clasped her hands together and raised a ball of dense profound energy light. Today, I'll let you have a taste of what it means to be inviolable. Ha 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 ha. After saying that, she laughed heartily, thinking that she could get rid of this little demoness today and win back her brother sect master's heart in a few days. The Raksha princess was in a very good mood. Sikong Fuling really fell for it even while lying down. How could she have known that the ghost princess was looking for trouble with her, because she was reluctant to leave her sect master? She mistakenly thought that the sect master was unwilling to accept her, the Raksha princess's good intentions, because he was hiding the saint of the demonic cult in his heart, that if she knew the truth, she would definitely tell this Raksha princess. Big sister, I'm begging you, you really found the wrong person. I've interacted with the sect master for so many years, but there's only sibling affection and no romantic love between us. Chapter 1100. Besides, hadn't her cult master taken a fancy to that black-hearted and merciless wretched doll? If she hadn't been injured by that stinky fellow previously, how could she not even have the strength to escape from the Raksha princess now? Sikong Fuling had indeed come to the Mystic Beast Forest to see Arbor, because that day, her elder brother had rolled back to the demonic sect headquarters in a sorry state, and his chest had even been heavily injured, which infuriated her greatly. She had to come and see who exactly was so vicious to deal such a heavy blow to her cult master. Her original plan was to get close to this little brat and pretend to be on good terms with her. Then, she would take advantage of the latter's unpreparedness to stab her and avenge her elder brother. However, this stinky child didn't like her at all from the very beginning. To think that she had purposely shown goodwill and helped that stinky lass when she first appeared at the small base. She didn't expect that the stinky lass didn't appreciate her kindness at all. It was truly a joyous occasion that came to naught. In the end, not to mention getting close to that wretched lass, she was nearly toyed to death by that crafty and eccentric girl. If the Raksha princess explained things clearly now, Sikong Fuling would definitely have to explain to her. How infuriating! Not only was she beaten up by Arbor, but she was also tricked. Now, she even had to take the blame for her that the Raksha princess didn't say anything and just beat Sikong Fuling to death. From the beginning until now, a smug smile hung on the Raksha princess's lips. Sikong Fuling, you the holy lady, must die in this mystic beast forest today. The Raksha princess chased after Sikong Fuling and repeatedly struck her with mystic energy. You can't escape. Fuck. Sikong Fuling really wanted to curse. This neurotic Raksha ghost sect master seemed to have gone mad and was bent on killing her. Why was this so? Raksha princess, don't bully me. Sikong Fuling turned around and exchanged a palm with the Raksha princess. She crashed to the left and spat out a mouthful of blood, which also activated the nearby talisman array. The Raksha princess looked in astonishment at the 60 talismans that suddenly appeared around her. It was a binding talisman array. The Rakshasa princess was trapped within. No matter how hard she tried, she was still trapped in the rune array. The binding glyph array, composed of 60 blue glyphs, could bind anyone below Arbor. However, Princess Luosha's current cultivation was above Arbor's, so the binding rune array could only trap her temporarily. She would definitely break free after a while. Sikong Fuling cut a sorry figure. Originally, her clothes were very thin and translucent, revealing 2 tender white thighs. At this moment, he had been hooked by tree branches in the forest and chased all the way here by Princess Raksha like a dog. His clothes were already tattered beyond recognition, and he was almost naked. She hurriedly took out a red robe from her inner world and draped it over her body before looking up at the Raksha princess. Sikong Fuling's eyes flashed as a flute landed in her hand. Placing it to her lips, she immediately started to play the flute. When playing this dark phoenix demonic flute, one must use profound energy in order to bring out the best effect. It was a pity that her profound energy had been severely damaged twice in a row, and she was already an arrow at the end of its flight. When she played it, the effect was greatly reduced. Even so, Sikong Fuling still persevered. After all, she could tell that this binding talisman array could only trap Princess Luosha for a while, and not for long. Once she broke free, it would be the time of her death. Chapter 1101. Right now, only by sending the Raksha princess into the nightmare realm could she obtain a chance of survival. Princess! The female disciple behind the Raksha princess cried out in alarm, and abruptly drew her sword. With a tense expression, she slashed at Sikong Fuling, who was holding the phoenix nether demonic flute, and playing the demonic notes while vigilantly watching her. Sikong Fuling had already exhausted too much mystic energy, and was merely forcefully holding on at the moment. A wisp of blood had already trickled down the corner of her lips. Seeing that she had no strength to resist this slash at all, Sikong Fuling couldn't help but sigh in disappointment and frustration. She didn't expect that this trip to the Mystic Beast Forest would actually be her suicide mission. Suddenly, a small, fair, and tender hand with slender jade-like fingers and a white wrist that was as transparent as moonlight drilled out from the side of her face. A claw directly latched onto the neck of the Raksha ghost sect female disciple who was thrusting her sword over. The slender hand exerted a bit of force. Crack! That Raksha ghost sect disciple's eyes bulged in disbelief. Her first thought before death was, how is this possible? That was clearly a girl's hand, yet it was actually as firm as jade, and directly twisted the neck of a level 10 mystic cultivator. Broken! Broken! Sikong Fuling's mouth was agape, and her neck stiffly moved. She turned around and looked in astonishment at the little lady standing behind her. Wearing plain clothes and a cold and emotionless expression, she stood in the pitch-black thicket like a jade statue flickering with a jade-colored glow. Bam! The Raksha princess, who had finally broken the entire talisman array, after flinging out waves of mystic energy, turned around just in time to see this scene. When she saw that expressionless little lady snap her subordinate's neck with one hand, even the Raksha princess, who was experienced and knowledgeable, couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. This kind of fear and cowardice made the Raksha princess feel exceptionally unwell. When had she ever been afraid of anything? Yet today, she actually felt a layer of fear towards such a young stoic-faced little lady. It was simply exceptionally hilarious. You! Who are you? The Raksha princess stared at Arbor fiercely while cowardly at heart, and she couldn't help but clench her fists tightly. Xiaomu abruptly moved, directly flitting towards the Raksha princess, and reaching out to strangle her neck. Boom! Princess Luosha took a step back, and threw out a powerful dark force at Arbor's body. The defensive barrier was instantly activated. He blocked Princess Luosha's attack without hesitation. Spirit weapon! As Princess Raksha screamed in shock, Arbor's 10 fingers, which were as hard as jade, stabbed toward the back of Princess Raksha's head. At this instant, not to mention the Raksha princess, even Sikong Fuling, who was watching from the sidelines, nearly stopped breathing. Too strong. It had only been 2 days since he last saw this little girl. Why did her cultivation seem to have improved so much? Sikong Fuling simply could not believe her own eyes. The Luosha princess leaped forward and dodged her claw in a wretched manner. She turned around and didn't have time to speak. Xiaomu stomped her foot on the ground, immediately creating a small pit. Her expression didn't change at all as she clawed forward with her small hand, ripping off half of the Raksha princess's tube top with a rip. Sikong Fuling. Fuck. If not for the fact that this little imp was a girl, she would have thought that this child was a pervert and sincere. The face of the Rakshasa ghost sex princess immediately turned green. She looked at the girl in front of her in disbelief. Suddenly, her brows twitched, and she nearly exclaimed, "Why, you're blind." Chapter 1102. Sikong Fuling looked over in shock, and finally saw Arbor's current expression. Her eyes were like two pools of cold water. Although they were limpid, pitch black, and extremely watery, one could see that there was no focus in them at all. She really was blind. How was this possible? Sikong Fuling sat up straight in shock. She was clearly fine several days ago. So how did she become blind when they met today? Arbor pursed her thin lips, and her eyes did not fluctuate in the slightest. She instinctively spread out her spiritual senses to the left, and reached out to grab the evil person who had broken her talisman array. She had said before that anyone who obstructed her cultivation would be sent to the netherworld, and would not be tolerated. The Raksha princess was thoroughly enraged. A blind person also dared to be impudent in front of her. This girl really had to be properly taught a lesson. "Come out, Misty Night Wolf!" The Raksha princess bellowed. A large wolf the size of two calves with shining pitch-black fur suddenly appeared next to the Raksha princess. Sikong Fuling swallowed her saliva and cried out to Arbor. "Level 14 Mystic Beast, Misty Night Wolf. Be careful." The Misty Night Wolf bared its sharp teeth at Arbor and crawled on the ground. It suddenly howled and flew toward Arbor. Bam! Qing Wan, who had abruptly appeared in front of Arbor, kicked the Misty Night Wolf to the ground. It whimpered twice, and its eyes emitted a wild and untamed green light. Arbor's surging spiritual senses formed a swift and invisible mental attack that directly penetrated the other party's conscious and tore it apart. The Raksha princess, who did not expect such a move, was caught off guard. Her conscious felt like it had been ruthlessly torn apart and was on the verge of shattering from the root. This caused her to be flustered and short of breath, and her body also followed up with the most honest reaction and spat out a large mouthful of blood. This was mystic conscious? No. This was spiritual sense, right? How could a little mystic cultivator's conscious generate spiritual sense? The Rakshasa princess only felt that her head was in a daze and in pain. Before she could think about it, she already had the intention to retreat. She extended her hand to summon the Fog Night Wolf back, turned around, and fled in a sorry state without looking back. Arbor looked at the Luosha princess coldly. Although she couldn't see, she could follow her with her psychic sense. Seeing that the man had indeed left the area as if he was fleeing, Arbor indifferently withdrew his spiritual sense and walked forward aimlessly. Sikong Fuling dazedly looked at her and called out, "Hey!" only to see her slowly walk away, without even turning her head. Sikong Fuling sighed softly as she watched her departing back view with a sour taste in her heart. This little fellow had unintentionally saved her life, and she wasn't someone who couldn't tell good from bad. After this incident, Sikong Fuling felt some gratitude toward the little fellow in her heart. My Lotus's section break. Greetings, princess. Two royal maids dressed in pink and green bowed in unison toward a woman who was slowly walking over with a smile while carrying a small floral food box. That girl looked to be 17 years old and had a delicate and beautiful rosy complexion on her fair oval face. Her combed black hair was coiled into a unique swan bun with a hairpin, and two purple-red pearl hairpins were inserted into the bun. Her exposed white wrists were also wearing a pair of priceless gold-threaded jasper bracelets. Seeing the two royal maids bow to her, that woman nodded slightly and said with excellent etiquette, "You two need not be so courteous." Chapter 1103. Thank you, Commandery Princess, the two junior royal maids said as they straightened up. Is His Highness inside the study? Commandery Princess Ian smiled faintly with an indescribable gentleness. The two royal maids exchanged glances before one of them mustered up her courage and replied, "Yes. Can you send someone to pass on the message that Ian requests to see His Highness?" "Yes." The other royal maid hastily turned around and ran towards the junior eunuch's duty room. Commandery Princess Ian stood outside the Eastern Palace's courtyard wall and waited quietly, not revealing the slightest bit of impatience or irritation. After a short while, the eunuch Xiao 11Z strode over and bowed to Commandery Princess Ian. "Commandery Princess, His Highness has some important matters to attend to, so he cannot find the time to meet you for the time being. Please return. Ian nodded gently as she handed the small food box in her hand to Xiao 11Z. I'll have to trouble eunuch Xiao 11Z to hand this food box to His Highness. This is a pastry that Ian made for Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. Her Majesty the Queen Dowager liked it very much after eating it, so she instructed Ian to give some to His Highness. Ah yes. Thank you, Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. Thank you, Commandery Princess. Xiao 11Z quickly and respectfully accepted it with both hands before saying to Commandery Princess Ian with a smile, Take care, Commandery Princess. Commandery Princess Ian nodded with a smile before turning to board a small sedan and returning the way she came. Xiao 11Z peered at that small sedan before letting out a sigh of relief. He muttered to himself, Fortunately, she didn't pester me. At least she's tactful. Eunuch Xiao 11Z. Why is His Highness not seeing the Commandery Princess? A royal maid in green couldn't resist asking softly in bewilderment. The Commandery Princess also had a lot of face in front of Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. Logically speaking, even if it was out of consideration for Her Majesty the Queen Dowager, His Highness should not be so cold to the Commandery Princess. Shoo shoo shoo, what do you know? Xiao 11Z grumpily waved his hand at those two royal maids. His Highness is busy, so how could he have the time to see this person today and see that tomorrow? Alright, hurry up and do your work. We don't need servants who talk too much in the Eastern Palace. Just remember what your master says and do it. There's no need for so many whys. After being rebuked by Xiao 11Z, the royal maid instantly shut her mouth in embarrassment. She curtsied and muttered, Yes. The sedan passed through a small garden outside the Eastern Palace and took a detour to the Empress Dowager's bedroom. Princess. Walking beside the sedan, a young girl with a long face couldn't help but pout and say, His Highness is too unreasonable. The princess was ordered by the Empress Dowager to deliver the pastries, but the Crown Prince didn't even see you. Shut up. Commandery Princess Ian's frigid voice traveled out from behind the curtain. Is His Highness's affair something a little wicked servant like you can casually fabricate? If you continue to talk nonsense like this and don't know your limits, I'll send you out of the palace tomorrow and send you back to the Marquis of Suan's residence. Ah! That young maidservant gaped in horror and rolled on the ground in fright. She repeatedly kowtowed and begged for mercy. Miss, please don't send me back. Yes, it was this servant who spoke out of turn. It was this servant's fault. Miss, this servant won't dare to do it again in the future. Commandery Princess Ian calmly ordered, Stop. Afterwards, she lifted the curtain by an inch and bent down to get out of the sedan. She then walked up to the young maidservant gracefully. Looking at her fearful appearance, Commandery Princess Ian sighed softly and bent down to help the young maidservant up. Chapter 1104. Do you know what you did wrong? Commandery Princess Ian asked her gently, as she patted away the dust on her skirt. The little girl cowered a bit, her face still ghastly pale. This servant misspoke. Commandery Princess Ian said dryly, Suer, you are my personal maidservant. Your every word and action, when you go out, represents this princess. You must remember not to speak carelessly in the future. The little girl sniffled as she wiped her tears with her sleeve and nodded vigorously. Yes, Suer will remember. Commandery Princess Ian then smiled and pulled her back to the sedan chair. It's getting late, so we have to hurry back. Ever since Ian's parents passed away, she had been staying by Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's side, and her residence was inside the Queen Dowager's longevity palace. All these years, the Queen Dowager doted on her, as if she was her biological granddaughter. Ian's status had also risen from the original orphan girl to the point where everyone fawned over her. In order to maintain her current status, she had to speak and act cautiously and abide by the rules. Although Her Majesty the Queen Dowager treated her as her biological granddaughter, she was not really her biological granddaughter after all. But if she could fight for another identity, then it would be a different story. She would no longer have to worry about difficulties in the palace in the future. Back then, she had brought Suer into the palace from the Marquis of Suan's estate, so she could be considered her #1 confidant. It was precisely because of this that she had to give her a warning from time to time, to prevent her from foolishly inviting trouble for herself. "Commandery Princess, we have arrived," Sua reminded her softly. It was only then that Commandery Princess Ian returned to her senses. She looked at Anya Pavilion that she was staying in, and stepped out of the sedan chair. After looking up for a while, she strode towards the Queen Dowager's bedchamber. "Let's go to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's place to take a look first." "Commandery Princess." At this time, another yellow-clothed young lady came out of Anya Pavilion, and bowed to Commandery Princess Ian. "The Madam of the Marquis of Su-An's estate has sent an invitation to request an audience." Commandery Princess Ian creased her brows. What did she come here for? She did not have a good relationship with this aunt. Ever since her parents passed away, if Her Majesty the Queen Dowager had not taken her in, who knew how she would have been tormented by this aunt? As a result, her feelings towards the Marquis of Su-An's residence also faded with each passing day. "Commandery Princess, you should meet the Marquis to avoid gossip." The palace maid dressed in yellow was able to distinguish right from wrong, and spoke up to remind her. Commandery Princess Ian nodded faintly. "Bring her over." After a short while, the Marquis of Su-An Estate's Marquis Madam shuffled over with small steps, followed by a young woman with a plump figure. When the Marchioness saw Commandery Princess Ian, she threw herself at her while bawling, "Little Ninth, you have to uphold justice for your fifth brother." "Ninth sister." The young married woman behind her also started to cry. Commandery Princess Ian's head swelled from their crying, and her expression involuntarily turned cold. "What happened?" "Marchioness, fifth young mistress, speak properly." The Marchioness of the Marquis of Su-An's estate sobbed as she clutched her handkerchief. After being helped up by old fifth's wife, she said to Commandery Princess Ian, "Little Ninth, your fifth brother, he died so tragically." "What happened to fifth young master?" Commandery Princess Ian asked indifferently. "Your fifth brother was killed by someone. He died in the secret room of his own room. The doctor said he was starved to death." Chapter 1105. The Marchioness of the Marquis of Su-An's estate cried and shouted while patting her chest. "Ian, you must seek justice for your fifth brother. Your fifth brother can't have died in vain like this." On the side, the fifth young madam pretended to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes, but she was sneering inwardly. This old woman simply didn't know what she was talking about. Did she really think that Commandery Princess Ian would seek justice for her? Did she forget what she had done to the Commandery Princess back then? Yet she still dared to plead with someone else now. If it weren't for this old woman insisting on dragging her into the palace, she would have long left the Marquis of Su-An's estate, that impoverished household, and fled far away with her little sweetheart. Who Yukong, that wretched man. So what if he died? Why did he have to die so shamelessly? When he was found naked in the secret chamber, with a servant girl, who did rough work in the court. It really made her lose face. She couldn't shed a single tear for this bastard. The fifth young madam sneered. Yet she pretended to be sobbing on the surface, as she followed behind the granny, and put in her best performance. After Commandery Princess Ian understood the situation, she told the Madam of the Marquis of Su-An's estate calmly and distantly, "The Marquis truly flatters me too much. Since such a major incident has occurred, the Supreme Judiciary will certainly send people to investigate properly. Ian is only an unmarried woman, so how could she have the ability to interfere with the Supreme Judiciary's investigation? Madam, please restrain your grief and wait for the news at home." The Madam of the Marquis of Su-An's estate glared at Commandery Princess Ian. "Great. Ever since you became a Commandery Princess, you completely disregarded the Marquis of Su-An's estate, right?" The old woman rebuked loudly. "Don't forget, you are a young lady from the Marquis of Su-An's estate, and you are called Hu Xuan. Don't even know your ancestor's surname." Ian clenched her fists in anger. "Madam, please mind your words and actions. I am your aunt, your elder. What's wrong with me lecturing you?" The old woman rebuked indignantly, and she snorted eccentrically with a crooked mouth. "If you can't uncover the true culprit in your fifth brother's matter, I won't be done with you." Oh, who do you want to be done with? A cold rebuke came from behind them. Commandery Princess Ian looked up with reddened eyes and hastily curtsied. Ian greets the Queen Dowager. The fifth young mistress shuddered and cursed the old lady in her heart. This damned old woman dared to be so arrogant in the palace, making a big fuss. Now, she had attracted the attention of the Empress Dowager. Let's see how the Empress Dowager will get out of the situation. Don't implicate me. The Marchioness of Suan was also shocked. She quickly turned around and put on a fawning old face, bowing in greeting. This subject's wife greets the Empress Dowager. The Queen Dowager didn't even look at that old and young pair. As she walked past them to Ian's side, she patted her small hand with a smile and asked, Ian, we heard that you went to the Eastern Palace. What is that grandson of mine doing? Commandery Princess Ian explained with a smile. His Highness is busy with official business, so Ian left after handing the pastries to eunuch Xiao 11Z. The Queen Dowager was taken aback. She glanced at Commandery Princess E, and before remarking with a shake of her head, That's true. This grandson of mine is good in every way. It's just that once he gets involved in official business, he forgets about sleep and food, forgetting everything else. Ian does not dare to disturb you. Oh, we know that you are the most sensible one. The Queen Dowager patted Ian's small hand with a smile. Let's go. Accompany we to the royal garden for a stroll. I heard that there is a newly secluded pond in the rear court, and it is very elegant. Commandery Princess Ian agreed with a nod with a smile. Chapter 1106. A yellow curtain that reached the ground fluttered gently. 2 guards were standing at the entrance to the Eastern Palace's small study, looking straight ahead. Xiao 11Z walked over in small quick steps. Inside the room, Prince Emo creased his brows as he looked at his slightly stiff fingers. He applied a layer of medicinal power to them, quickly dispelling this stiff feeling. He propped up his chin with one hand, as he stared at his other hand, that was loosening and clenching. He speculated that this should be some kind of neurotoxin, but if he couldn't find the source, he wouldn't be able to prescribe the right medicine. Your Highness! Xiao 11Z ran in hastily with a small embroidered food box in his hand. Emolienne didn't even look up as she asked apathetically, She left? Yes. This servant informed Commandery Princess E, and in accordance with your Highness's instructions. She didn't pester us, and left without another word. Emolienne nodded. Just as she picked up her brush to write down a word, she gripped her right wrist tightly, a faint viciousness flashing past her eyes. Damn it! That stiff feeling had crept up on her arm again, after she used medicinal power to heal it. If he found that guy Ding Ting Ding, he would definitely chop him into pieces to vent the hatred in his heart. After using medicinal power to treat her arm again, Emolienne looked up slightly, and glared impatiently at Xiao 11Z, who was standing inside the room. Is there anything else? Yes, Commandery Princess Ian left behind some pastries. She said that she had received Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's instructions, and specially gave them to your Highness to taste. Emolienne glanced apathetically at the food box that Xiao 11Z was holding in his hand. He knitted his brows and said, Since it's a reward from the Queen Dowager, you can distribute it to the palace servants below. Pick out a pot of first-rate longevity flowers for us as a gift to grandmother. As you command. Xiao 11Z lowered his head, and silently retreated with the food box. He mused. His Highness doesn't even want to touch Commandery Princess Ian's pastries. His attitude is already so clear. So why does this Commandery Princess Ian keep coming to the Eastern Palace? She really doesn't have any discernment. After Xiao 11Z left, Huifeng arrived in front of the Crown Prince in a flash. Your Highness, the Hidden Night Pavilion received news that the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm has been unsealed ahead of time. Everyone was teleported out, but the Crown Princess was nowhere to be seen. Prince Emo immediately lost his composure and jumped up from the stool. What did you say? Hadn't it only been 10 days or so? How could the Mystic Realm have been unsealed? Wasn't it supposed to be a month? Why didn't it count? Your Highness, we've already sent Lightning's group from the Mystic Beast Forest base into the forest to search for the Crown Princess. Huifeng said worriedly. Right now the 2 sects, 5 factions, 8 great patrician families, for great manners, Ani Prefecture, Luotian Prefecture, and others have all run to the Mystic Beast Forest. I wonder if something will happen. Emolian couldn't sit still on the spot. His little fellow didn't have a good relationship with the 5 factions and 8 great patrician families. In addition, there was also Ani Prefecture and Luotian Prefecture eyeing her covetously from the sidelines. How could he not be worried about her safety? This won't do, make preparations immediately. I'm going to the Mystic Beast Forest to search for her. Prince Emo made a prompt decision. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to go find her. Find her, find her. There was a voice that kept reverberating in his mind, as if something bad would happen if he couldn't find her. His heart thumped rapidly, and his expression was as cold as water. Immediately summon 3,000 hidden guards, and head to the Mystic Beast Forest with me to search for the Crown Princess. Yes. Chapter 1107. Huifeng knew that His Highness the Crown Prince must be burning with anxiety right now, so he jumped out of the window and hastily went to inform the hidden guards to come. Soon the great king, who was holding the beauty's wrist and accompanying her in painting in Zhao bedchamber, received the latest news. His Highness the Crown Prince had ordered 3,000 hidden guards to set off for the Mystic Beast Forest, and tossed all the unfinished business to him. This son of a fraud. Truly, he had a wife but no father. Every time he encountered a matter concerning his wife, he could even abandon his father. Unfilial son. So infuriating. Mylian's section break. At the entrance to Anya Pavilion, Suer, who was overjoyed, hurriedly followed her young miss footsteps. When she passed by the Marchioness and her daughter-in-law, who were half squatting and sweating profusely, she even provocatively curled her lips and rolled her eyes at them. From beginning to end, the Queen Dowager did not allow the Marchioness and her daughter-in-law to get up. She did not even glance at them from the corner of her eye until she disappeared from Anya Pavilion with Commandery Princess Ian. The group of junior royal maids covered their mouths as they peeped at the Marchioness and her daughter-in-law, as if they were watching a good show. Afterwards they dispersed. It was not until a few minutes later that the Marchioness finally dared to stand up with her hands on her hips. She groaned and exchanged glances with her daughter-in-law, who still had lingering fears. The two supported each other and left with tearful faces while massaging their waists. Back then, the Queen Dowager had accompanied the former king to conquer the country. Women were not inferior to men, so she was naturally very forthright. As a result, she also looked down on the bashful Marchioness and her daughter-in-law. Child, how many times have I told you? Don't meet those unnecessary people if you don't want to. The Queen Dowager sighed softly as she turned to glance at Ian beside her. Commandery Princess Ian's eyes reddened as she said softly, Ian was thinking that since we are family after all, it would not be good to go overboard for the sake of face. Sai you are just too kind-hearted. The Queen Dowager shook her head before saying with a smile, you should find a chance to meet that little sister-in-law of yours and learn from her. With your personality, you won't be so soft and easily manipulated. Little sister-in-law. Commandery Princess Ian was startled. That's right. The little granddaughter-in-law that I've never met. The Empress Dowager said with a smile. For the past few days, Aijia has been asking Gong Chang and to come over and tell me stories, ha ha ha. At the mention of the little crown princess, the Empress Dowager actually beamed with joy. You don't know she's amazing. Hee hee, I really like her methods. You know what? The great king's consort Zheng was amazing. In the end, when he saw my granddaughter-in-law, he was like a mouse seeing a cat. Also that old woman from the Shu family bullied her, and she immediately retaliated. Even now, that old woman is still learning the rules at home. Ha 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 ha. When the Empress Dowager talked about something happy, she actually looked up to the sky and laughed. The old nanny following behind her couldn't help but twitch her mouth. She hurriedly stepped forward and whispered to the Empress Dowager. Your Highness, you've already mentioned this 3 times today. Really? The Queen Dowager laughed heartily. Afterwards, she turned to say to Ian, who was smiling faintly, it's a pity that this little fellow hasn't returned from the Mystic Beast Forest yet. Otherwise, I really would have to meet her properly. Commandery Princess E, and didn't know what to say in response, so she could only smile faintly. Ian, you are 17 this year, right? The Count of Jian'an's estate's son is 2 years older than you. Chapter 1108. That's because he is extremely good-looking, and his cultivation is also not bad at such a young age. This Empress Dowager is very optimistic about him. If you're willing, this Empress Dowager will make the decision and let you meet him. The Empress Dowager said with a smile. If you don't like him, then this Empress Dowager will help you find someone else. Queen Dowager. Commandery Princess Ian's expression stiffened before turning into a bashful smile. Her hand holding Her Majesty the Queen Dowager also involuntarily paused, and she quickly said, Ian only wishes to be able to accompany the Queen Dowager. Sigh, what nonsense are you saying? The Queen Dowager cast her a glance before harumphing. I am just an old woman, so it's fine with Fenggu accompanying me. You are so young, so of course you have to find a good in-law. What is there to be shy about? My youngest granddaughter-in-law hasn't even turned 15 this year. Yet she has already been engaged to my grandson. That's why it is better to get married sooner rather than later. Otherwise, all the good ones will be taken away. Behind her, elderly Nanny Fenggu burst into laughter and couldn't resist teasing. Your Majesty, young ladies are all shy. How do you want the Commandery Princess to answer your question? Okay, then I will make the decision. The Queen Dowager nodded with a chuckle. In 2 days, have the Countess of Jian and come over for tea, and have her bring that rascal into the palace. Let our Ian take a look. Fenggu agreed with a smile. Yes, your Majesty. This old servant will remember this. Commandery Princess Ian's slender hand, that was hanging by her side, clenched slightly before letting go. She revealed a gentle and bashful smile, that was just the right amount of gentleness. The group accompanied the Queen Dowager to stroll around the small garden for an hour, before returning to the Longevity Palace. After Ian bid farewell and left, Fenggu handed a cup of tea to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. The Queen Dowager shook her head slightly as she watched Ian's departing figure. Fenggu, what do you think this child is thinking? Fenggu quickly said, Your Majesty the Queen Dowager has already done your best for Commandery Princess Ian. The Commandery Princess will definitely understand. This morning, we only mentioned casually that the Crown Prince should also like such good pastries. But to her, it would become following an imperial edict to deliver pastries to the Eastern Palace. If the Crown Prince wasn't smart enough, he might even develop a grudge against his grandmother. Fenggu nodded slightly. Your Highness's eyes are as sharp as torches. What can be hidden from your Highness's eyes? It's not that I don't know. All these years, Ian had always wanted to approach the Crown Prince step by step, but if the Crown Prince was truly interested in her, would he need to wait until now? Her Highness is the wisest. Fenggu nodded as she took out a hot handkerchief and handed it to the Empress Dowager to wipe her hands. She casually said, Then the son of the Count of Jian'an's family today was also deliberately probed by your Highness? That's not it. The Queen Dowager shook her head and accepted the handkerchief to wipe her hands, saying, I have watched Ian grow up. I also hope that she can find a good family and have a good husband in the future. The Count of Jian and has a good family background. The Count of Jian and his wife are both good people. The most important thing is that there are no messy concubines at home. The Count of Jian and has been guarding his wife for 30 years. That's great. The son of the Count of Jian and Pei Dao was also young and promising. He never had bad habits. He is a youth that the Crown Prince values, so his future is naturally limitless. We truly want to betroth her to the son of the Count of Jianan. The Queen Dowager sighed as she said, But from the looks of it, there probably isn't much of a chance. Chapter 1109. And will definitely understand your Majesty's painstaking efforts in the future. It's also my fault for not disciplining him strictly. The great king's current state is mostly due to my spoiling. Back then. Sigh, let's not talk about it. What's done is done, and it can't be remedied. The Queen Dowager sighed with melancholy. Just like a normal mother, She had followed the former king to conquer the country and suffered enough, so she wanted to give her son the best things in the world. She had spoiled and spoiled the great king, Mole, since he was young, so he didn't amount to much. The great king's situation had formidable parents and a fierce son, while he himself was unambitious and relied on his parents above and his son below. Thus, he got by just like this. It's just my grandson who has suffered, having such an unreliable father. He has been burdened with a lot of things since he was young. The Queen Dowager lamented. He finally found someone he likes and wants to spend the rest of his life with. No matter what, this widow cannot let anyone ruin it. Of course, Feng Gu said with a nod. These past few days, this old servant has been hearing Gong Chang and talk about the crown princess. This old servant is also itching to meet the crown princess immediately. The Queen Dowager smiled again, her eyes narrowed into slits. I liked it the moment I heard it. This child will definitely hit it off well with me. This child is good at everything. It's just that she is a bit too pretentious and not sincere enough. The Queen Dowager commented with a shake of her head. Ian actually didn't understand the Queen Dowager. The Queen Dowager was an honest elderly lady, and it wasn't without reason that she liked the Crown Prince and Little Twelfth. These two children were just normal grandchildren in front of her, and they would happily call her grandmother when they saw her. Other children would not be like this. If Ian wasn't so pretentious and let go of her temperament in front of the Queen Dowager, perhaps the Queen Dowager would like her a bit more. Her standards are so high, and the one she likes is the Crown Prince. She clearly knows that it is a dead end, yet she still insists on running headfirst into it when this widow lured her back. The Queen Dowager sighed. At this moment, a secret guard came to report that the Crown Prince had left the capital. When the Empress Dowager heard this, she laughed loudly. She pulled Aunt Feng aside and said, Look, look, look. My grandson has gone to chase after his wife. We've only been gone for less than 10 days. Look at how impatient this child is. Ha 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 ha. Feng Gu pursed her lips and giggled. My Joe's section break. At the same time, Arbor was strolling aimlessly in the Mystic Beast Forest. If he encountered any ignorant profound beasts that pounced over, he would mercilessly kill them with a single strike, and then instinctively dig out their crystal cores. The entire Mystic Beast Forest was like her home's imperial garden. She walked and stopped, and from time to time, she would use her spiritual perception to scan her surroundings. She was searching for a better place with dense mystic energy to cultivate. In front of them was a small stream, the sound of water flowing through the forest. Sikong Fuling, who was sitting on a rock by the stream and washing her prey, turned her head warily when she heard faint footsteps. He couldn't help but stare blankly. Arbor walked over expressionlessly. After surveying the surroundings with his spiritual perception, he stretched out his leg to walk forward. Hey, there's water up ahead. You'll get wet if you step in. Sikong Fuling quickly stood up and pulled him back. Arbor turned his head, his unfocused gaze landing on her face. Gulp. A loud rumbling sound came from his stomach. Sikong Fuling couldn't help but smile after being taken aback. She pulled him back a few steps. Wait here. Chapter 11:10. Arbor simply didn't know that Sikong Fuling was talking to her. She just instinctively found a clean place to sit down. Very quickly, Sikong Fuling set up a bonfire and placed a small type of cleanly skinned mystic beast on it to roast. Not long after, the aroma wafted out, and Sikong Fuling grumbled, My mouth is so bland from eating dry rations every day. Fortunately, this kind of small mystic beast hasn't mutated. Although the meat isn't considered fresh and tender, it's still enough to eat 2 bites. I spent a lot of effort to get rid of the fishy smell. As Sikong Fuling spoke, she threw her a piece of thigh meat wrapped in leaves. Arbor sat at the side like a jade carving. When the item flew in front of her, she couldn't help but reach out to catch it steadily. Sikong Fuling raised her eyebrows, and her probing gaze fell on her. She was clearly blind, so how could her movements be so precise? Could it be that her mystic sense was very powerful? Thinking of the Raksha princess who had been defeated and fled by Arbor, that person suddenly clutched her head and retreated in defeat. Could that be the legendary mystic sense attack? Sikong Fuling's pupils immediately contracted, and she took a bite of the mystic beast meat in her hand. It was hard, sour, and unpalatable, and truly had a feeling of being unable to swallow it. Looking up again, she saw that the little girl had finished eating that piece of thigh meat in a short while. Sikong Fuling inwardly admired this little fellow. She was so young, but she could endure so much hardship. Look at her eating such unpalatable meat without wrinkling her brows in order to fill her stomach. She couldn't even compare to such a small little girl. Sikong Fuling frowned, and looked like she was going to climb a mountain of swords, or plunge into a sea of fire. She swallowed that hard and somewhat sour meat bite by bite, and she repeatedly vomited as she ate. Her admiration for Arbor increased by several degrees. She was worthy of being the crown princess at such a young age. She was indeed born with the spirit of a superior person. How could Sikong Fuling know that the little girl had no sense of taste at all? Everything she ate was like chewing wax, and it was just a subconscious action to fill her stomach. If she regained her sense of taste, not to mention such a large piece of meat, even if it was just a bite, she would spit it out. At night, Sikong Fuling found a clean place to lie down and rest. Glancing over, she saw Arbor sitting upright and still under a tree, meditating with his eyes closed. The corners of her mouth twitched involuntarily. Was there a need for this child to be so hurtful? Would he die if he didn't cultivate for a day? Cultivating at night instead of sleeping was simply an eyesore. She touched the dagger beside her and tossed and turned for most of the night. Then she sat up and looked at Arbor's expressionless face in the darkness. Right now, she should be completely immersed in cultivation. Gritting her teeth, Sikong Fuling stood up and agilely walked to her side. Should she make a move on her? That vicious little fellow had almost taken his elder brother's life with that slash of his saber. That was a real stab to the heart. Even as a bystander, she felt her heart ache. Not to mention how pitiful and heartbroken her elder brother, who had really suffered that stab. Sikong Fuling reached out to touch the dagger tied to her calf, and made a motion to pull it out. Then, she paused and looked at Arbor with a melancholy expression. Forget it. She still owed her a life. How could she do something like repay kindness with enmity? Chapter 11:11. Moreover, although she was a demoness, she still had her bottom line. Out of sight, out of mind. Sikong Fuling simply turned and left the stream, heading to other parts of the forest through the night. Less than a second after she left, Arbor opened her eyes, and her tense aura slowly relaxed. If Sikong Fuling had made a move just now, Arbor would have killed her without hesitation. Because anyone who hindered her from cultivating must go to hell. In a moment, Sikong Fuling had slipped one round around the gates of hell. Arbor didn't care where Sikong Fuling went. She didn't even know this person, and closed her eyes. Sikong Fuling didn't know how long she had walked for, but she felt that it should have been the middle of the night. Day and night couldn't be seen in this gloomy mystic beast forest, but according to her estimation, it should be dawn now. Sikong Fuling halted her steps, and turned back to take a look. She didn't know what was wrong with that fellow, but she was blind and somewhat dazed. Wasn't it too much for her to leave just like that? After all, she had saved her life before, and all the previous small conflicts could be disregarded. What if that fellow starved herself to death just like that? Then wouldn't she have indirectly killed her benefactor? Sikong Fuling also didn't understand her current state of mind. After being conflicted for a while, she couldn't resist turning around and sprinting toward the stream. However, when she ran back to the stream, she discovered that the little fellow had long disappeared without a trace. And right at this moment, a fiery cloud soared into the sky, boiling over half of the sky. A layer of golden red light descended to the earth along with this fiery cloud, forming a spectacular golden pillar that connected the sky and earth together. Stunned, Sikong Fuling opened her mouth wide and looked up at the horizon. What the fuck was that? The phoenix egg has descended. A bloodfire phoenix egg. Father, the bloodfire phoenix egg really has descended, Liang Qingqing exclaimed with a slightly agitated expression. Sect Master Liang smiled and nodded. Everyone be careful. This bloodfire phoenix egg can't possibly have popped out from a crack in a rock. If the Phoenix couple is also present, don't do anything and just watch the show. That's right. The sect master of the Heavenly Path sect, Sita Min, nodded. He turned around and said a few words to the excited disciples. The most unlucky ones were Mu Boming, Do Heping, and Qing Guilu. They were originally flying towards Arbor's cultivation ground, but halfway through, they realized that the halo had completely disappeared. At that time, Arbor had already exited his cultivation state and was fighting with the Rakshasa Ghost sect leader, Princess Rakshasa. Mu Boming and the others lost the location of Arbor's cultivation, so they could only search the vicinity in a daze. However, Arbor continued to wander in the forest. How could they find her? Mu Boming and the others couldn't help but vomit blood when they saw the place where the Bloodfire Phoenix egg had lit up. It was actually a place that was very far away from them in a straight line. This time, they really had to speed up and run wildly. Along the way, there were disciples who couldn't keep up with their speed and fell behind, but Mu Boming, Do Heping, and the others couldn't care less. They just kept urging themselves to go faster, faster, and even faster in their hearts. Their Phoenix egg, they didn't want others to beat them to it. Back to Arbor. Not long after Sikong Fuling left, she also exited her cultivation state. Chapter 11-12. She disliked that the mystic energy next to the stream wasn't dense enough, and wanted to move to another place to search. Just as she was casually strolling around, she sensed that more than half of the mystic beast forest was suddenly covered by a surge of restless and dense fire spiritual energy. Hurl! Something fell from the sky and smashed toward her head. In the blink of an eye, Arbor turned around and swiftly stepped away, avoiding the whistling sound of the wind. Boom! That thing smashed into the thick pile of withered grass in the forest. Xiaomu used her spiritual conscience to look over, and saw that it was a strange oval-shaped object that was sitting on the pile of withered grass just like that. Its entire body was overflowing with a red light, and it looked quite big and heavy. She didn't know what the hell it was, but when it fell from the sky just now, it almost smashed through her head. Arbor turned around and was about to stroll around again when she heard a rumbling sound. When she turned around to look, that oval-shaped thing had actually rolled to her little feet. Xiaomu didn't hesitate at all, and directly kicked it flying. Qing Wan, who had silently appeared, couldn't help but cover her eyes with her wings. Didn't I already say not to act cute in front of Master? Master isn't a normal girl at all, okay? She never liked cute things. Master. Qing Wan felt that she needed to remind her foolish master. Pitiful little master. She was actually tricked into this state by the giant ape. A heaven-defying, unparalleled Bloodfire Phoenix egg fell from the sky and rolled to her feet. But she actually didn't want it. Arbor actually didn't hear Qing Wan's voice. She only felt that something had appeared beside her. So she blankly turned her head and looked at Qing Wan. She kept feeling that her mind was blank, but there was a voice in her heart that wanted to tell her, this weak chicken can't be beaten. Master, this is a Bloodfire Phoenix egg and can't be kicked. You should pick it up and bring it back. After speaking, she realized that her little master couldn't hear her at all. Moreover, with her current brain, she reckoned that she wouldn't understand what she meant even if she heard. A person who only had the word cultivation in her head basically had zero survival ability. Everything depended on her subconscious instincts for survival. Seeing how she couldn't even feel the hunger in her stomach before, it was obvious how miserable she was now. Qing Wan flapped its wings and flew to the little master's shoulder. Its furry little body nudged her neck. Poor master, don't be afraid. Qing Wan will protect you. In the next second, the expressionless little master cruelly reached out and slapped it. With a piu sound, it was sent flying. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg that had been kicked away strenuously rolled back. Just as it touched Arbor's calf, she raised her small foot and made a kicking posture. Wait! Pa! Arbor couldn't even hear what Qing Wan said. So how could he hear the sound of an egg? This kick was even more ferocious. After being kicked against a tree, the Bloodfire Phoenix egg bounced back with a piu, and once again rolled to Xiaomu's side with a thud. Master! Qing Wan simply transformed into her human form. with a messy bird's nest hair. She ran to Arbor's side in tears and grabbed her little hand. "Stop kicking. This is a Bloodfire Phoenix egg. It can fight and use big moves. It has no problem going up the mountain or down the sea. Even if it's not good, we can roast it and eat it." Chapter 11:13. He knew that his little master couldn't hear and could only see him with her spiritual senses. Qing Yuan hastily made all sorts of strange movements, jumping and hopping. In the end, he even fished out an egg and knocked it twice. Then, he peeled the shell out and handed it to his little master, pointing at her little mouth. Arbor expressionlessly reached out to take that small egg and took a bite. She, who didn't feel anything after eating, directly stuffed the entire egg into her mouth. Classmate Qing Yuan's mouth twitched. Why did he feel that this master was even more adorable than before? Arbor turned to look at that Bloodfire Phoenix egg and walked toward it. A small hammer suddenly appeared in her hand. Qing Yuan, who was following behind her, suddenly widened her eyes and hastily exclaimed, "You can't eat it now, you can't." The Bloodfire Phoenix egg rolling under the tree shook its round body for no reason and angrily jumped up and down, emitting a soft cry. "You woman! Stop right there." Arbor's hand, which was holding the small hammer, was forcefully pulled back by Qing Yuan, who rushed over afterwards. Qing Yuan once again gestured with his hands and feet, using images to make Arbor understand that this Bloodfire Phoenix egg had to be roasted first before it could be eaten. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg jumped up and bumped into Qing Yuan. "You damned bird, don't always slander me. You idiot, hurry up and retract the light on your body," Qing Yuan shouted irritably. At this very moment, everyone in the entire Mystic Beast Forest was rushing over in a flurry. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg's red light was too dazzling. Even a blind person could find its direction, let alone in such a dark and overgrown forest. This round of light was simply a guiding light. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg said weakly, "I can't retract it." "Fraud." Qing Yuan directly picked up that egg and stuffed it into Arbor's arms. Then, she pulled her and ran into the depths of the forest. "Hurry and go, little master. Many people are chasing after us. Where are you running to?" A shout came from midair. The speed of the approaching person was rather fast. In the blink of an eye, the huge shadow covered the entire area. This was a middle-aged man with a dark face, a square mouth and a wide nose. His black robe fluttered in the wind. Arbor hugged a Bloodfire Phoenix egg and looked at the middle-aged man expressionlessly. Qing Yuan could feel the man's strength, but fortunately he was alone. Thus, he hurriedly pushed his little master behind him and gestured for her to leave first. "Master, quickly take the Bloodfire Phoenix egg and leave first. I'll hold them off here." Arbor's eyes flickered. At this moment, it was as if something was about to emerge from the depths of her mind, causing her to inadvertently frown. He pulled Qing Yuan's arm and pulled it behind him. The little fellow looked up at the middle-aged man and suddenly threw the Bloodfire Phoenix egg. The corner of Qing Yuan's mouth twitched. Then, she saw that in the next second, the little master turned around and gave a swift and happy flying kick, directly kicking the Bloodfire Phoenix egg towards the middle-aged man's face. Qing Yuan. Actually, after such a long time, he should understand his little master very well. This kind of fraudulent thing was indeed something she would do. She was a little master who could even abandon Lady Holy Water for her own sect. Chapter 11:14. Little Master didn't like cute things at all, so naturally, she wouldn't have much affection for cute things in the depths of her heart. In her opinion, there was only a difference between those who were close and those who were distant. Those who were close should be protected, and those who were distant could be thrown away at any time. For example, this Bloodfire Phoenix egg right now was just a useless egg that could be thrown away at any time compared to Qing Yuan. It was useless. The strangest thing was that middle-aged man. He actually thought that the phoenix egg that his little master threw over was a trap. Therefore, he roared in the air, and his supreme mystic energy pressure increased. His chest and abdomen were filled with swirling mystic energy, and with a boom, He threw down the Bloodfire Phoenix egg that flew to his side. Classmate Qingwan suddenly felt some sympathy for this egg. Arbor didn't have any expression when she saw this. If she still had emotions, she would be furious. She wondered if this person was sick. Didn't he come for this oval thing? Why didn't he want it now? With such a pause, Arbor kicked the phoenix egg again and sent it flying. The middle-aged man kicked it again, that the two people kicked back and forth 2 or 3 times. The phoenix egg couldn't bear it anymore and became angry. These two insignificant humans, what did they think it was? It was the one and only Bloodfire Phoenix in the world. When Arbor kicked the middle-aged man, a red light of spiritual energy burst out from the phoenix egg. No, it didn't even look like spiritual energy, but a higher level of power. This terrifying power directly wrapped around the middle-aged man, and with a loud bang, his entire body exploded, turning into ashes. He died without a burial place. This happened in just a breath's time. The Crimson Phoenix egg was infuriated, and it cursed the heavens, cursed the earth, and cursed Xiaomu. It pounced over and fiercely smashed Xiaomu's large head with a bounce. You damn woman! What do you think this lord is? A ball? You can kick me here and there. This lord doesn't care about face. Arbor looked expressionlessly at the phoenix egg that was jumping in front of her and constantly hitting her little head. She didn't know what it was shouting about. You bastard! You don't want this lord for this weak little green bird. Do you know who this lord is? I am an ancient Bloodfire Phoenix egg. This seat can only condense 1 egg every 10,000 years. An ancient Bloodfire Phoenix egg. This seat is HHHHHH. You idiot! Why don't you come and curry favor with me? What kind of expression is that? Looking at the egg that was going crazy, Qingwan kindly reminded it weakly. That egg. What the hell? My name is Blazing Blood. I am the Blazing Blood Phoenix that only appears once every 10,000 years. Blazing Blood Supreme. Great Blood Blaze God. Okay. Great God. Qingwan's mouth twitched. Don't shout in front of Master. Her 5 senses are blocked. She can't hear or see anything. I can only use my spiritual sense to take a look. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg immediately let out a new round of angry roars, which were directed at Qingwan. You stupid bird. Why didn't you say so earlier? Are you trying to anger me to death? Come over here and gesture to her. Ask her why she doesn't want me. Why? This phoenix egg was really going crazy. Qingwan weakly moved to Arbor's side, tugged at her little master's sleeve, and gestured to her. Little master, the phoenix is asking you why you don't want her. Chapter 11:15. Arbor's 10,000-year expressionless face didn't have a single ripple of emotion. The phoenix egg became even angrier when it saw this. It jumped up and was about to smash her head, wishing it could wake her up. I'm a million times stronger than this stinky cyan bird. Why do you want him and not me? You idiot. You don't even know who I am, do you? Hurry up and tell me. Master, she can't speak. Why didn't you say so earlier? The phoenix egg's rage had reached a critical point. Soon after, it spread out its powerful divine sense and directly rushed into Arbor's consciousness. With a glance, it roared even more angrily. You damned woman. You actually already contracted with another profound beast? Don't you know that you humans can only contract with one profound beast in your entire life? You actually formed a contract with a weak Xian beast so casually. With your talent, you clearly have a better choice. The phoenix egg communicated with her mental energy through her conscious pool, so Xiaomu actually heard it. However, she subconsciously disliked this guy's tone of voice very much. Even if her memories were temporarily blocked, she was still a protective little fellow in her bones. Even if she had contracted a weak profound beast, she didn't need this damned phoenix egg to point fingers at her from the side and make a fuss. Woman, be grateful to me. Right now, let me help you remove the profound beast's contract from before. The phoenix egg's voice was complacent. Unexpectedly, Arbor wasn't happy. With a move of her spiritual energy, she immediately communicated with it. You're not allowed to remove it. Even though she didn't know what this phoenix egg wanted to do, she subconsciously felt that it wasn't anything good. Why? The Bloodfire Phoenix egg was really angry. He had never seen such a person. A phoenix egg fell from the sky. Such a good opportunity was placed in front of her. And she actually didn't firmly grasp it? She would rather contract with a weak chicken than him, the great Bloodfire god? This made his heart extremely angry. Give me a reason. The Bloodfire phoenix egg's voice was no longer soft and cute. Instead, it was filled with an invisible pressure, intensely pressuring Arbor. I don't want you. Xiaomu impatiently used her mental energy to communicate with him. She took out the sleeping little white squirrel from her chest and stroked its soft fur. The Bloodfire phoenix egg was so angry that it was about to burn itself into ashes. He suddenly laughed coldly. Unfortunately, you can't refuse. This damned human actually wants to reject me? He wanted to form a contract with her because of her talent. Instead of accepting his gift, he actually wanted to reject it. What a despicable human. On the phoenix egg's body, raging flames ignited. Those were the flames of his own anger, that an extremely domineering and intimidating power seeped into the depths of Xiaomu's conscious, not allowing her to refuse, and rushed towards that mental contract. In the blink of an eye, in the depths of his conscious, the 12 jade slips that had been bundled together suddenly opened up and formed a wall. The golden talisman jade tome activated its self-protective consciousness and blocked the phoenix egg's spiritual energy. At the same time, an angry consciousness rushed out of Arbor's consciousness and flew towards the phoenix egg's mental contract. Arbor only felt his consciousness surge like a raging wave. The two fiercely collided. His pupil shrank. In the next moment, because of the endless pain in his consciousness, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The green vine in her sleeve instinctively drilled out and attacked the phoenix egg that was attacking her consciousness. The Bloodfire phoenix egg was stunned. Chapter 11:16. As a result, he couldn't react in time and was hit squarely by the vine whip. However, although he was still in the form of an egg, he was still a Bloodfire phoenix egg after all, so this vine whip couldn't do anything to him. He just felt very aggrieved and face-slapped. The Bloodfire deity discovered that this little girl really didn't like him from the bottom of her heart. It didn't seem like she was faking it. However, he was clearly the Bloodfire deity, the incomparable Bloodfire phoenix egg in the world. Who in this world didn't want him? Moreover, when he wanted to forcefully break the mental contract with that weak beast, he discovered that the weak beast wasn't simple at all. There was a powerful barrier in this little girl's conscious that controlled everything with absolute mental defense. He really didn't expect that this little girl, who looked to be only 14 or 15 years old, would have such a strange existence in her conscious. At this time, the second batch of people from Ani Prefecture arrived. Ani Prefecture's disciple, Gong Yang, led more than 50 disciples to Arbor's group. He couldn't help but exclaim when he saw her. It's you! After so many years, this little girl's appearance was firmly imprinted in the depths of his mind. 2 years ago, the battle on the Holy Water Sect's main peak nearly killed all the Ani Prefecture disciples on the spot. As Hong Jinchuan's eldest disciple, and a level 12 mystic cultivator, Gong Yang followed Hong Jinchuan from beginning to end, and led his team to trample all over the Holy Water Sect's peaks. Before Arbor could open the Tianji treasure blueprint, Gong Yang collapsed from exhaustion. As a result, he escaped a calamity and didn't directly enjoy the Tianji treasure blueprint's attack. He only saw that little girl from the Holy Water Sect madly flinging out a divine weapon and indiscriminately killing many people. Afterwards, he was thrown off the main peak by a huge force and completely fainted. When he fled back to Ani Prefecture's stronghold like a stray dog, he heard from others that his master, Hong Jinchuan's life tablet, had completely shattered. Of the more than 300 Ani Prefecture disciples who went with him to encircle the Holy Water Sect, only a dozen or so escaped. Among them, there were many who were missing limbs and were mentally deranged. He didn't expect to meet this little girl from the Holy Water Sect again in the Mystic Beast Forest 2 years later. A trace of fear and jealousy flashed in Gong Yang's eyes. He hurriedly approached a robust old man in his 60s and loudly said, "It's her consecrator Li, a remnant of the Holy Water Sect. She might know the whereabouts of the sacred water." Also, she has a divine artifact, the Tianji treasure map. What? The old man named Consecrator Li was overjoyed when he heard the news. He looked at Arbor and laughed. That's really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. There is indeed a type of person in this world who is gifted and born with great luck. Look, there's the divine artifact Tianji treasure map, and the sacred beast phoenix egg. Consecrator Li's gaze fell directly on the bloodfire phoenix egg beside Arbor's leg, and his eyes revealed a greedy light. Wait until I catch you, little girl. I'll interrogate you to find out the whereabouts of the holy water. Consecrator Li reached out his hand to grab Arbor as soon as he finished speaking. However, he caught nothing but air. Xiaomu's footsteps shifted extremely quickly, and she kicked that phoenix egg directly at the elder. She instinctively believed that this person also came to ask for the phoenix egg. That old man chattered so much earlier, but she didn't hear a single word. However, the bloodfire phoenix was very angry. Chapter 11:17. In his current situation, he was still an egg after all. Earlier, he had already used all his strength to finish off that middle-aged man in one move. But now he was powerless to continue. The comical thing was that Pundit Li didn't dare to directly grab that phoenix egg emitting dense flames. He had just shaken out a net from his inner world, and originally wanted to catch this egg first. Who knew that this egg was completely conscious? When it saw Pundit Li take out a net to catch it, it rolled back to Arbor's side as if the egg had grown legs. Pundit Li's aura sank, and he emitted a powerful mental pressure that crushed Arbor. Although Pundit Li's cultivation had been suppressed to level 1 spiritual cultivator, and he didn't dare to easily use spiritual energy under the heavenly law's nose, his mystic conscious had already reached level 9. He expected that he could do whatever he wanted in the lower star domain. He originally thought that this attack would definitely crush that little girl, until she vomited blood and collapsed on the ground. However, things didn't go as he wished. This mystic conscious attack didn't cause the slightest ripple, and the little girl before him was still perfectly fine. However, he didn't know that if Arbor's conscious hadn't been damaged, and his spiritual consciousness hadn't been greatly weakened, that old man would have already been sent to some unknown country by the backlash. The old man let out a faint sound of bewilderment, and changed to using the power of a level 1 spiritual cultivator to suppress Arbor. This little girl is a bit dangerous. Pundit Li, you mustn't lower your guard. This girl has the Tianji treasure map on her. Gong Yang was halfway through his words, when he suddenly saw Arbor turn around, and cast a glance in his direction. He only felt that the little girl's eyes, which were like icy pearls, seemed to flash with saber light and sword shadows. It was abnormally vicious and malicious. How could Gong Yang know that Arbor's memories had been blocked at this time? However, she seemed to subconsciously remember this person. Many years ago, she had repeatedly flipped through many people's life lanterns in the ancestral hall. She had seen all the holy water sect disciples' images before they died. If her memories still existed at this time, she would definitely remember that this Gong Yang in front of her was the person who made Fat Sister ruthlessly self-destruct back then. He had taken care of them on the first peak for 30 years, like it was just one day. Fat Sis, who was responsible for all her daily needs, was gone because of this bastard. She stared at him coldly. Suddenly, she sent a wisp of her spiritual sense straight into the depths of Gong Yang's conscious. Compared to Reverendly, Gong Yang's conscious was far inferior. This ferocious spiritual sense attack directly knocked Gong Yang back 3 steps. His mind was in a daze. He held his head and howled a few times. Set up the formation. Consecratorly shouted with a sullen face. More than 50 Ani Prefecture disciples rushed out from behind Gong Yang. They drew their swords in unison, and set up an inescapable sword formation. The disciples of Ani Prefecture had cultivated this sword formation for many years, and their coordination could be said to be quite good. When the entire sword formation was in operation, it was as if thousands of swords had formed a red sun, swaying back and forth around Arbor. Consecratorly laughed sinisterly, and his powerful cultivation once again suppressed Arbor's figure. You can break her arms and legs, but don't take her life. This old man still wants to keep this little girl alive, to inquire about the holy water's whereabouts. At this time, Gong Yang's pale face had also recovered some of his lucidity. He glared at Arbor and said resentfully, "Consecratorly, I see that this little girl is a cultivation prodigy. If you use her body as a cultivation cauldron, Consecrator Li's cultivation will definitely rise to another level." Consecrator Li hadn't thought of this, and he couldn't help but laugh loudly at Gong Yang's reminder. Chapter 11:18. Gong Yang, your idea isn't bad. Consecrator Li looked at Arbor, who was standing in the sword circle, with a sinister smile. He shouted to the disciples, "Remember, don't harm her life. Just break the tendons in her arms and legs." Taking a closer look, you are indeed a peerless beauty. To be able to become this old man's cultivation furnace, it can be considered your good fortune. Ha ha ha. As the old man spoke, he laughed complacently. But he didn't forget to release the strongest mystic energy a level 1 spirit master could release to control Arbor, who was inside the sword circle. This sword circle's advantage was in coordination. It gathered the cultivations of over 50 people, turning them into a whole, condensing them into a ball. In a short period of time, it would be difficult for Arbor to break out of this sword circle by herself. Moreover, her conscience had been injured just now. Right now, she only felt a faint headache. The best method was to find a secluded place to sit down and continue cultivating, recovering her spiritual sense. But the current situation didn't allow her to stop and rest. She could only continue fighting. Of course, deep in her heart she didn't fear anyone. Moreover, although she didn't know what they were blabbering about, seeing their vulgar expressions, she knew it wasn't anything good. Suddenly, something flashed in the depths of her mind. As if suddenly realizing something, she took out a round bead from her pocket. The Duan family's core ravaging thunder. Gong Yang suddenly screamed. "Quickly dodge, this thing is incomparably powerful." Gong Yang had actually been paying attention to Arbor all this time, because he was afraid she wouldn't take out the Tianji treasure blueprint at any time to kill them all. But after waiting for a while, the Tianji treasure blueprint didn't appear. Instead, a very dangerous core-ravaging thunder came. Arbor didn't wait for him to finish screaming. She threw down a core-ravaging thunder and instinctively stuck a teleportation talisman on herself and Blue Luan. With a whoosh, she moved out of the sword circle and instantly appeared 1,000 meters away as fast as lightning. Consecrator Li's eyes widened. Before he could react, he heard a loud boom. The disciples of Ani Prefecture, who were gathered together, were in for a bad time. The disciples in the inner circle just happened to be at the core of the core-ravaging thunder's explosion. They were blasted to pieces, missing limbs and mangled flesh. The dozen or so people in the outer circle were slightly better off, but their faces and bodies were also covered in blood. They were blown away by the blast of the explosion. The might of the core-ravaging thunder had alarmed all the Xian beasts in half of the forest. For a moment, a loud roar came from the depths of the forest. Previously, because of the birth of the Bloodfire Phoenix egg, all the beasts were dormant and didn't dare to move. Now that they saw that the Phoenix egg didn't move, the boss of the forest finally dared to roar in anger. Arbor and Qing Wan had already turned around and ran away, leaving behind an egg who was hopping and chasing after them. He was so angry that he shouted, "Stop, you guys, stop!" Pa! A large furry white tail suddenly attacked the Bloodfire Phoenix egg. If it wasn't for the fact that the Phoenix egg rolled quickly, it would have been hit by the tail. The tail missed and drew a white mark on the ground. Wherever it passed, a huge rock half the height of a person was directly smashed into pieces. Arbor stared blankly. She lowered her head and looked at her empty little hand. She turned her head to look at the snow-white little critter with an indescribable expression. If she was awake right now, she would definitely shout happily, "Chirp chirp, you're awake." However, she was currently looking at them expressionlessly. There wasn't the slightest fluctuation in her emotions. Chapter 11:19. It was during this pause that an E-Prefecture's consecratorly caught up with an unsightly expression, leading a group of defeated soldiers. With a wave of his hand, the remaining dozen or so in prefecture's people surrounded Arbor. But everyone's faces were a bit pale as they looked at Arbor with trepidation. "Stinky girl, I really underestimated you," Consecrator shouted angrily, giving Gong Yang a meaningful look. Gong Yang nodded in understanding and secretly slid her feet twice. She suddenly reached out to grab Arbor's shoulder, a vicious glint flashing through her eyes. She intended to break Arbor's arm. Chirp! A white fluffy figure shot over like an arrow, angrily slapping Gong Yang's face with its little claws. With a pounce, Gong Yang screamed and raised his hand to cover his face. Fresh blood slid down from between his fingers. The little fat squirrel's movements were too fast. In just a breath's time, it succeeded in its surprise attack and clawed Gong Yang's eye blind. Consecrator cursed "useless thing" in his heart and directly rushed towards Arbor. He sneered and said, "Stinky girl, if you have the guts, try throwing another core ravaging thunder." He wasn't a fool. He naturally knew that a great killing weapon like the core ravaging thunder was an extremely rare item, even in a concealed weapon aristocratic family. Confirming that Arbor couldn't possibly have a second core ravaging thunder, Consecrator fearlessly struck out two palms in Arbor's direction, vigorous mystic energy suddenly encircling her. Gong Yang covered his face with one hand and screamed with a distorted expression. "Consecrator, quickly catch this stinky girl." Once Consecrator turned this stinky girl into a cultivation vessel, he would definitely make this girl beg for death in order to avenge the enmity of losing an eye today. This hateful girl actually dared to let a weak little mystic beast from God knows where scratch his eye blind. Gong Yang was so angry that he couldn't restrain himself. His entire body trembled in anger on the spot. Consecrator sneered. This old man's movements weren't slow. While using mystic energy to lock Arbor in place, he had already flashed in front of her and was about to grab her delicate little neck in the next second. Arbor suddenly raised his small hand. Consecrator was shocked, and he flew back like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Gong Yang, who was covering his eyes with one hand, also cried out in horror and suddenly retreated. The dozen or so people from the Ani prefecture, who had encircled Xiao Mu on the outside, also stumbled back a dozen or so steps, glaring at her in terror. Arbor looked at the crowd coldly and quietly put down his little hand. Consecrator saw that she didn't move for a long time and couldn't help but cry out in anger. This damned brat dared to trick him. The most hateful thing was that there were so many of them. But she actually succeeded in tricking them. How infuriating. Consecrator had a fierce look on his face. He jumped up and swept his strong old leg towards Arbor's feet. There was anger on his face. The dozen or so in prefecture's disciples once again surrounded him like wolves and tigers. Just at this time, Arbor once again raised her small hand and made a small action of throwing a core ravaging thunder. Consecrator was greatly alarmed. He quickly rolled on the ground like a gourd and rolled to the side. He hurriedly opened his defensive barrier and prepared for a full defense. Those dozen or so in prefecture's disciples were so scared that their faces were pale. They rolled on the ground and loudly gasped for breath. They were so scared that they retreated again. However, after half a day, there was still no movement. Consecrator and the others were dumbfounded as they looked at the little girl, who had played them for a fool. Chapter 11:20. Damn it! Pundit Li's face was already contorted. He was extremely furious. Being toyed with by this wretched girl time and time again, he only felt that his old face was burning hot, and he was abnormally embarrassed. Gong Yang covered one of his eyes at the side and screamed urgently, "Pundit, don't fall for her trick. This wretched girl is only scaring us. She definitely doesn't have a large firearm like the core ravaging thunder on her. She doesn't have it. Don't hesitate, quickly catch her. Don't let her escape," Gong Yang urged from the side. "Don't forget that she's the only one who knows the whereabouts of the holy water and the Tianji treasure map on her." Xiao Mu blinked, unable to understand why these people kept crowding around her. Logically speaking, they wanted that round egg, and she had already given it to them. But they were still surrounding her, not knowing what they wanted to do. so annoying that it was time for her to cultivate. It was better to kill all these people who were hindering her from cultivating. Otherwise, they would always be buzzing around her like dead flies. Arbor separated her palms, and a wave of spirit energy appeared on her body. Suddenly, Pundit Lee and the rest were stunned to find that the soil on the ground rolled up the leaves, like a wriggling dragon. An earth-shattering layer of soil suddenly rose up from the ground, turning over and smashing down on everyone. Earth Spirit. Pundit Lee was instantly stunned. With his eyesight, he could naturally tell at a glance that Arbor was using one of the 5 spirits, the Earth Spirit. This wretched girl had already comprehended the Earth Spirit at such a young age. Comprehending the Earth Spirit in a place like the lower star domain? Or could it be that she wasn't from the lower star domain at all? Pundit Lee jumped in fright and hurriedly retreated, trying to escape from this earth-shattering wall with lightning speed. Boom! The tumbling earth wall came crashing down, instantly drowning the dozen of an E-Prefecture's disciples who had lost their arms and legs and looked like arrows at the end of their flight. Gong Yang saw that the situation was not good and turned to escape. Suddenly, something round rolled all the way to his feet. Gong Yang lowered his head to look, and his eyes suddenly bulged. He let out a miserable cry, and before he could escape, he was sent flying by a huge explosive force. This time, he happened to be in the center of the explosion of the core-ravaging thunder. How could he survive? His entire body was flung out and ruthlessly smashed into a broken old tree before tumbling to the ground with a boom. His upper body fell to the ground like a puppet, and he couldn't even close his eyes before he died. It was as if he was in complete disbelief that Xiao Mu, this little fellow, would actually carry a second core-ravaging thunder on her and casually throw it away. When Consecrator Lee broke through the soil layer and jumped out with a loud shout, he saw Gong Yang's tragic death before he died. His broken body was hanging on half of a withered tree. It was very scary. Consecrator Lee's scalp went numb. He turned around and saw that he was the only one left in the huge Oni Prefecture team. This little girl's battle prowess could not be judged based on her current cultivation. High Official Lee already had thoughts of retreating. Between treasures in his life, Consecrator Lee still cherished his life. The core-ravaging thunder on the little girl was especially terrifying. Compared to what he had seen before, it was even more powerful. It could actually blast Gong Yang, a level 12 mystic cultivator, into smithereens in an instant. How dehumanizing was this? Chapter 1121. He didn't know if there was a third core-ravaging thunder on this damned girl. He couldn't afford to gamble. After the earth layer was turned over, Mr. Lee's body was already covered in blood, and he couldn't fight anymore. Since he already had the intention to retreat, he made a prompt decision to fly backwards. But after running for a few steps, he saw a snow-white squirrel-like little beast squatting there, eyeing him covetously. Its pair of small eyes were staring at him just like that. Consecrator Lee immediately flew into a rage. With a roar, he kicked over. "Get out of my way!" Damn it! Even a weak little beast could casually block his way now. It was simply seeking its own death. Mr. Lee's face was ugly. He was sure that his kick would definitely send this weak beast flying into the sky. He didn't care whether it was dead or alive. Anyway, if it dared to block his way, he would kill it all. However, the flying into the sky that he expected didn't happen. On the contrary, he clearly heard the crisp sound of his leg bones breaking. He immediately wailed and cold sweat dripped down his head. That kick just now was as if he had kicked a piece of iron plate, causing his leg bones to fracture. Don't joke around. He was a level 1 spiritual master. For someone with his cultivation level, his whole body had been trained to the point where it was impregnable. Not to mention kicking such a weak little beast. Even if he was hit by the core-ravaging thunder just now, it wouldn't be enough to make him so miserable. So to say that this little beast wasn't a weak beast. Could it be a spiritual beast? Or a divine beast? Consecrator Lee was flabbergasted as he stared at the little weak beast that was constantly stretching its body and suddenly grew to the size of a small hill in front of him. Dragging his broken old leg, he took a few steps back and swallowed his saliva in panic. Why did it turn out like this? What kind of monster was this? He had never seen a little squirrel that could grow to the size of a mountain. His eyes bulged and he subconsciously shrank back. When she turned her head, she saw the slender figure standing under the tree. Her evil guts welled up, and she pounced at Xiao Mu, her hands grabbing for Xiao Mu's slender neck. No, he must catch this damned girl in his hands to save his life. Bang! A white, furry tail suddenly covered the top of his head and swept over, instantly sending the old man, who was trying to grab Xiao Mu, flying. He crashed headfirst into a tree with a thud, and he tumbled to the ground with a cry of pain. The little white squirrel that had turned into the size of a small hill had a pair of small eyes that flashed with a cold light. It contained a deterrent force that Consecrator Li could not understand. When he fell to the ground, he felt as if his internal organs had been flipped upside down by the tail. After enduring for 2 seconds, he instantly spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with bits of his internal organs. With this spray, his aura became much more dispirited, and he fell to the ground on the verge of death, leaving only a pair of frightened eyes staring at the giant beast in front of him. He was scared. No, he regretted it. Let me go. Mr. Li coughed heavily and turned to look at Arbor. He said word by word, "This old man can cough serve you as my master." However, Arbor didn't know what he was mumbling about and didn't give him any response. The little white squirrel saw that its little master's face was incomparably cold and knew that its master didn't want to let this damned old man live. Chapter 11:22. Since that was the case, then he would take care of the old man. His long tail immediately swept over again. Don't be fooled by the large, furry tail that looked very gentle and warm when it landed on Consecrated Li's body. Its might was comparable to that of a giant pillar reaching the heavens. He was instantly smashed into mincemeat, and his head was smashed into pieces and buried in the ground. Roar! After the hill-sized squirrel lord finished dealing with the old man, he suddenly roared toward the depths of the forest. The dense pressure spread out, causing the group of small beasts that were originally restless and uneasy in the entire forest, intending to run to the base to attack the humans, to be so scared that they covered their heads and scurried away. One after another, they pitifully retreated back to their own small territories. So terrifying. Even that boss in the forest didn't dare to make a sound at this time. This dense and terrifying aura was clearly on par with the aura when the Bloodfire Phoenix egg was born. Terrifying. The appearance of a holy beast Bloodfire Phoenix egg in the Mystic Beast Forest was already frightening enough. Why did such a big shot appear now? Do Hepping, Mu Boming, and the others, who were desperately rushing toward this end of the forest, were shaken by the little squirrel's roar halfway and tumbled to the ground on the spot. The ground of the entire Mystic Beast Forest was faintly trembling. The members of the group rolled all over the ground. They struggled to get up in a fluster and looked for trees, boulders, and other things to hide behind in their fright. Fuck! What was going on? The 2 earth-shattering explosions earlier had caused them to look for cover everywhere like quails. Now there was the roar of a giant beast. That can't you just let me travel happily? After waiting for a while, and discovering that there was nothing out of the ordinary in their surroundings, Mu Boming and Do Hepping walked out from behind a large tree with strange expressions. When they turned around, they saw Qin Guilu, and the eldest young Sir leading a group of people from the Qin estate, rushing over at a moderate speed. They didn't appear to be in a sorry state, and seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll along the way, which made Family Head Mu and Family Head Do's teeth ache. So everyone is here. Qin Xian looked at the people from the Do and Mu clans with a grin. With a jade-like beauty and a distinguished and elegant demeanor, this eldest young master merely stood there, and immediately caused Miss Jilan of the Mu family to blush. Family Head Qin and young Master Qin don't seem to care much about the phoenix egg. Mu Boming tugged at the corner of his mouth with a fake smile. Upon seeing this, Qin Guilu chuckled and said, "It's not about caring or not. Although this phoenix egg is good, there is only one of it after all. Whether or not we can get it depends on fate. Let's just leave it to fate." Mu Boming's lips quivered, and then he laughed in mock embarrassment. Family Head Qin is indeed open-minded. Family Head, If you don't go over now, it'll be too late. Mu Zijuan reminded with a taut face. The red clouds in the sky that had been dyed red by the birth of the phoenix egg were slowly fading away. If he didn't rush over now, he wouldn't even be able to tell which direction the phoenix egg was in. Mu Boming hurriedly responded and nodded. Let's go. Thus, he no longer argued with the Qin family, and hurriedly led the group in the direction of the phoenix egg's flash. The people from the Dou family naturally weren't willing to fall behind. Dou Heping cupped his hands at family head Qin, before hastily leading the group in pursuit. The two groups traversed the great mystic beast forest in tandem, as they chased after each other. Chapter 11:23. The two teams traversed the great mystic beast forest one after the other in pursuit. After running for so long, they had truly exhausted some of their stamina, and some of the youths in the team with inferior cultivations had fallen behind. Qin Xian leisurely walked beside family head Qin, but a moment later he asked with a smile, "Did you guys notice that the phoenix egg is currently moving forward?" After he mentioned it, everyone abruptly realized that the phoenix egg had shifted forward by at least several hundred meters from where they had seen it previously. Eldest young Sir Qin chuckled as he lightly struck his palm with his fist. "Say, do you guys think that the phoenix egg has grown legs and is purposely avoiding us?" Everyone. Eldest young sir, your joke isn't funny at all. Yet Qin Guilu said with a smile. Phoenix eggs are born with intelligence, so it's not impossible. Squeak squeak. Suddenly, a small mouse with sparse hair on its head popped out from the thicket, and its beady red eyes glanced at them. Ah, damned mouse. The startled Yang Fengyan's fingers moved slightly, and a burst of mystic energy pounced at that mouse. After a soft zung sound, the small mouse was struck by the mystic energy, and it rolled. With a kick of its hind legs, it fled through the thicket in terror. Qin Guilu creased his brows imperceptibly. Mu Jilan suddenly burst out in laughter, and her tone was not without mockery as she said, "You can't even kill a mouse." Yang Fengyan's small face flushed red under her veil. How could she have known that this mouse was so strange? She had clearly sent out a burst of level 4 mystic energy earlier, but a mouse actually slipped away. Mu Boming waved his hand with a smile and said, "Jilan, let's go." Yes, family head. Mu Jilan pursed her lips and revealed a mocking smile again. When she passed by eldest young Sir Qin, she even snuck a glance at him. However, she didn't expect to meet eldest young Sir's smiling gaze. This was great. Her maiden heart thumped wildly, and she hurriedly followed family head Mu. On the side, Mu Zijuan saw this, and a sneer surfaced in his mind. Love-struck fool. "Father." Suddenly a voice called out. Dou Heping hurriedly turned his head and saw his daughter, Dou Fengqi, catching up from behind. "Phoenix Pool." "Father." Dou Fengqi stomped her feet and ran forward with an aggrieved expression. "Why are all of you here?" "It's a long story. Let's talk as we walk." Seeing that Mu Boming and the others had already set off, Dou Heping hurriedly ran after them. At this time, the ground had returned to normal. However, just as the eldest young master had said, that hateful phoenix egg kept moving forward, as if it was deliberately avoiding everyone. "Father, what's going on? What was that red light?" "The Bloodfire phoenix egg has descended. Now all the powers have gathered here. Those who can come are all here. Don't worry about anything else. What's going on with you? Aren't you training in the secret realm?" "Don't mention it, father." Dou Fengqi angrily stomped her feet. "I was forcefully sent out. It's that woman's doing." "Which woman? Who else could it be? The crown princess." "What?" Dou Heping actually paused in shock before quickly running again. "We'll talk about this later." Chapter 11:24. The urgent matter at hand was to see what was going on with the phoenix egg. Behind Dou Heping, a young lady who resembled Dou Fengqi in appearance, but looked slightly younger, couldn't resist pursing her lips and saying with a smile, "So useless. We agreed on a month of training, but we were forcefully transported out in less than half a month." "Dou Fengniao, shut your mouth." Dou Fengqi retorted with a cold expression. "If you went, you might end up worse than me." Alright. When Do Heping saw that these two sisters had started dog-eat-dog again, he could only separate them with a headache. Stop bickering, you two sisters. It's more important to take care of proper business right now. The group continued to run for a while as they spoke. The Do family and Mu family couldn't bear the enormous physical exhaustion, and more disciples fell behind. Do Heping and Mu Boming's expressions were slightly unsightly. In contrast, Qin Guilu looked nonchalant as he turned to the two of them and said with a smile, "Family head Mu. Family head Do. Leave it to fate, leave it to fate." Pooh. Leave it to fate my ass. Do Heping and Mu Boming secretly cursed Qin Guilu. That old fox in their hearts. Look at that red light. Mu Jilan suddenly raised her hand and pointed ahead. Everyone looked over and saw that the red light ahead had dimmed considerably, so faint that it was almost indistinguishable. Fuck, the phoenix egg couldn't have been picked up by someone, right? A Qin estate disciple realized the truth. Upon hearing this, Yang Fengyan immediately said indignantly, "Impossible. It takes some time for a phoenix egg to recognize a master. It hasn't even been an hour since the phoenix egg descended into the world. Even contracting the phoenix egg won't be that fast." Qin Guilu nodded, and his gaze flickered as he glanced at eldest young Sir Qin beside him. The latter pursed his lips at him disinterestedly. "Let's go over and take a look. That phoenix egg seems to have stopped." That's right. Although that red light in the forest had dimmed considerably, it finally stopped moving around crazily. Now that everyone had a clear target, they went over quickly. It didn't take long for them to find the source of the red light. Pushing aside the overgrown branches, they ran over to take a look. Everyone couldn't help but be startled. He saw a large piece of woodland, with only some debris and broken branches left. A deep pit was blasted in the middle, and the surrounding grass and trees were all razed to the ground. Thinking of the two huge tremors they heard before, everyone couldn't help but be speechless. After walking a little further, they saw a slender figure in plain clothes, sitting with her back facing them. Looking at her back, she was actually a little girl. Everyone hurriedly quickened their pace and surrounded him, but they were also very careful to see if there were any traps under their feet. "It's you." Do Fengqi circled to the front and saw the young lady's face. She couldn't help but cry out in alarm with a face full of resentment. Qin Guilu was also taken aback, and he involuntarily cupped his hands toward the seated figure. "Miss Qiao." At this moment, Miss Qiao's body was covered in a faint red light, which was very dazzling. She was sitting in front of a group of people. When she heard the sound of footsteps, she didn't move at all. She didn't even bat an eyelid. Seeing this, Do Fengqi couldn't help but be furious. She rushed forward and pointed at Arbor, then said angrily, "All right. You threw us out of the mystic realm one by one. I thought you would be able to stay in there for a long time by yourself. I didn't expect you to come out as well. Is there any meaning in doing such a thankless task?" Fengqi. Second young Sir Do frowned slightly as he reprimanded. Chapter 1125. Second brother. Do Fengqi stomped her feet in anger. "It's all because of her that I—" "Shut up." Second young Sir Do glared impatiently at his younger sister. On the side, his younger sister Do Fengyao couldn't help but chuckle. "What are you grumbling about when your skills are inferior to others?" Do Fengyao. All right. Do Heping was about to be angered to death by these two sisters. They were still fighting like dogs in front of a group of outsiders, making the Do family a laughingstock for no reason. Mu Boming's eyes flickered, and he walked forward and cupped his hands. "Miss Qiao, can you explain to us why you're covered in red light? Did you pick up a phoenix egg? Hand over the bloodfire phoenix egg." A trace of jealousy and hatred flitted through Yang Fengyan's eyes, and her eyes under the veil glared venomously at Arbor. She already knew that this crown princess who had parachuted into the Mo kingdom was the little maidservant who had previously stayed in their Qin estate and disfigured her face by whipping her. As a result, her face had yet to fully recover, so she could only wear a veil when she went out. She seemed to be called something like Mu Xiaobao, that lowly slut who hooked up with men all day long. Not only did she not seduce eldest cousin and second cousin, she even hooked up with the crown prince now. Simply abominable. Right hand over the phoenix egg. The Qin Estate's disciples also stared fervently at the red light on Arbor's body, and they involuntarily took a few steps forward. Withdraw. Eldest young Sir Qin swept a cold gaze over them, promptly sweeping away the impulsive emotions in their heads. Under the eldest young Sir's intimidating gaze, they shuddered and subconsciously retreated a few steps. It was only then that eldest young Sir Qin turned around and chuckled at the little stoic sitting cross-legged in front of everyone. He called out, "Xiaobao, what are you doing sitting here by yourself?" Yang Fengyan clenched her fists and abruptly took a step forward, pulling out her sword to stab at Arbor. "Cousin, don't waste your breath on this woman. Just make her hand over the phoenix egg." The eldest young Sir nimbly grabbed her arm, a trace of fury flitting through his eyes. "Who told you to attack?" "Ah, cousin. Cousin. Yang Fengyan struggled with a pained expression on her face. Her wrist felt like it was about to break when he grabbed it. Seeing this, Mu Jilan's eyes flashed with a cold light. Her fingertips moved stealthily, and an attack talisman shot towards Arbor. Eldest young Sir Qin hadn't expected that Mu Jilan would also suddenly make a move. Unable to stop her in time, the talisman flashed by at an extraordinarily fast speed. He watched as the attack talisman flew towards Arbor, and his heart skipped a beat. Bang! Arbor's figure suddenly disappeared, and Mu Jilan's attack talisman missed. When everyone looked closely, they saw that Arbor's expression hadn't changed, and his posture hadn't changed at all. He had only moved a little, and now he was 5 feet away from them. Damn it! Mu Jilan was enraged, and 2 talismans swiftly darted out between her fingers. Just as she was about to release them, eldest young Sir Qin flicked his sleeve, causing her to stagger. "What are you doing?" Qin Xian glanced at Mu Jilan in dissatisfaction. Suddenly, they heard a gust of wind, and 2 Dou family disciples simultaneously pounced towards Arbor, greed flickering in their eyes. Hand over the phoenix egg. Those 2 longswords intertwined to form a sword shadow and slashed towards Arbor. Bang! Arbor's figure once again moved 5 feet away. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.